This is KE5ICX.
W5FC.
I heard you that time. The CDS.
ARRL NTS Net nightly at 6:30 p.m. W5FC.
Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
And does anyone need to use the repeater before we begin tonight's Skynet? This is Kilo Echo 5 India Charlie X-Ray. My name is Tom, and I'll be your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help our amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, comments, and suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time using the pro sign, break, and your call sign. Is there any emergency or priority traffic? Come now. This is a directed net, so therefore please do not transmit without direction from net control. That would be me this evening, and stations are reminded to ID at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on this frequency with a field tone of 110.9er. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the W5FC-R station ID or Echolink node 37247. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio-video links are available online. Go to W5FC.org right now for the complete list. And remember to tell others about this popular net. All amateur operators are welcome and need not be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. This net is 90 minutes long and is structured in several parts. General announcements, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, where and when you can look through a telescope, not anytime soon. National Space Society events and activities. Discussion topic of the evening, what's up? Space exploration and space history. Constellation of the week, space launches of the week, recent astronomical discoveries, visible satellite passages over the next couple of days, astronomical Q&A, and the 73 round. Let's see here. Let's do low power short time check-ins. Please come now with your call sign name and where you are transmitting from. Let me know if you're low power short time.
This is Whiskey 5 Golf Uniform Sierra Gus, far northeast Dallas, and low power. This is Whiskey Bravo number 4 Mike Foxtrot India WD4MFI Ted Dallas low power.
This is 5 Golf Romeo Hotel, Melissa, Northeast Dallas.
All right, I've got 3. I've got WB4MFI, Ted, Dallas, low power, W5GUS, Gus, far northeast Dallas. He's also low power. KI5GRH, that's Melissa, northeast of Dallas. I don't know if you're low power, short time, or just checking in, but I got you checked in either way. Anyway, do any of the three of you have anything you want to bring to the net this evening? Please come with your call. All right, let's go ahead and go to general check-ins. If you'd like to join us, please come with your call sign phonetically, your name and where you're transmitting from.
November 5, Bravo, Bravo. Bill in Irving.
Kilo Golf 5, Whiskey Zulu Zulu, Bob in North Dallas.
Kilo India 5, Papa Golf Mike, Travis in Garland.
Kilo Golf 5, Uniform Foxtrot Romeo, Jacob in Dallas.
Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, Brendan DeSoto.
Alpha India 5, Delta Yankee, AI5DY, Bill, Garland.
This is Kilo 5, Kilo Tank Ray Kelly in Quinlan.
Kilo Golf 5, Bravo Zoo Whiskey J near Weatherford. This is Alpha Alpha 5, Alpha Hotel Robert Richardson.
This is Kilo Golf 5, Whiskey Victor Lima, James in Carrollton.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Juliet Hotel Alpha, Chaz, Mesquite.
Okay, pretty healthy check-ins there. Let me see if I got everybody. I may need to fill on one of these. I've got N5BB, Bill and Irving. KG5, Whiskey Zulu Zulu, that's Bob in North Dallas. I've got Travis, I think it's KI5PGM over in Garland. Travis, did I have that right?
You got that right. My QTH is in McKinney, but I am transmitting from Garland today. KI5 PGM.
All right, very good. Got it down right then. KG5UFR, Jacob in Dallas. I've got WB5OZL, Miss Brenda in DeSoto. AI5DY, Bill in Garland. K5KTX, K5KTX, Miss Kelly in Quinlan. KG5BZWJ near Weatherford. AA5AH, Robert in Richardson. KG5 Whiskey Victor Lima, that's James in Carrollton. KF5JJ, Chaz in Mesquite. Additional check-ins, I'll take them right now.
This is Alpha Golf 9 Sierra Golf, Antonio in Dallas.
Kilo Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean in Fort Worth.
All right, we picked up two more. I got Alpha Golf 9, Sierra Golf, that's Antonio in Dallas. I checked in, KB9SOK, Sean in Fort Worth. Before we get started, anyone else? I think Echolink is taken care of as badly as it's working right now, apparently. But I got everybody checked in over there. Anyone else like to check in, please come to your call sign, name, where you're transmitting from. do we have any general announcements for this evening's net? These can be of ham, astronomical, space, or of general interest to licensed hams. Well, let's go ahead and get it started with our own announcements here. Don't forget AMSAT. We actually have 3 nets available to Dallas residents. Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. You'll need Echolink installed and registered. You can find AMSAT, AMSAT, the Radio Amateur Satellite Group, by going to under Echolink AMSAT. There's also a live audio link that's available at amsatnet.com. This net originates in Houston, Texas. Also at Tuesday night, local net, this is the Dallas AMSAT East here on this repeater. Tom, N5HYT is the net control, and all are welcome to check in. The first Tuesday of the month is DARC Club night, so there is no AMSAT Net East. We also have an AMSAT Net West, which is every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. on the Arlington repeater. Tom does that one too. The Arlington repeater is 147.140 megahertz with a tilt on 110 decimal niner with a positive offset. Next up, we have Dallas hosted nets. Let me give you those. We have on Mondays, first week on Monday at 7 o'clock is Ham Fixin's Net. The second week, which, by the way, Ham Fixin's Net is everything having to do with food. So if you're interested in talking about food, cooking techniques, you name it, that's the net to be a part of. The second week is MCOM 101. That's when Kevin, N5KRG, will talk about all things having to do with emergency communications. Pretty fun. Third week, a second helping of Ham Fixins, also at 7 o'clock. Fourth week is GeekNet. We open it up to not just amateur radio, but anything geeky you want to talk about. There's usually some interesting trivia things that go on, as well as just open discussion about geeky stuff. Fifth week, SurpriseNet. If we told you what it was, it wouldn't be a surprise. On-air participation is encouraged. So last time we did this, we had, I think, a Jeopardy-type style thing, but we do all sorts of things. We've done stories. We've had bass fishing, believe it or not. Just about everything you can imagine and can't imagine. On Friday evenings, we have Cert City Simulation. That's, I think the summer hours are still going on at 8 p.m. Learn about emergency radio communications via Cert-trained radio operators. Melissa, KI50H, who is checked in on this net as net control. This is the most disaster-prone city in the universe. Every Friday, Cert City. All are welcome. And that's at 8 o'clock. Saturdays is the night of nets. We have TechNet at 7. We have Skynet at 9. And then at 10:30, we have the Afterglow Movie Net, which I'll tell you about in just a minute. Daily, this repeater also hosts the ARRL National Traffic System Training Net. That's at 6:30 p.m. If you would like to learn about formalized traffic in how to handle formalized traffic, this is the place to be. If you're new to amateur radio, you can find out how a structured net is conducted. This is also done on the National Traffic System nets on HF too. So this would be a good place to find out about NTS and how it all works. And as long as you follow FCC rules, you can't make a mistake because it is a training net. That's what it's for. So tonight's Afterglow Movie Net is as follows. The year is 1964, the future. The American nuclear submarine Sawfish, run by the Royal Australian Navy, is ordered to find out why someone is sending out poorly articulated Morse code and is out of band. The newly militarized ARRL wants answers, and they want them now. Obviously, Morse code enforcement and nuclear ICBMs were a worthy and effective deterrent. Commander Dwight Lionel Towers, in charge of the USS Sawfish, advanced class radio operator, and his tough-as-nails CW Fist demands a response from the erstwhile operator. Too many people were getting on frequency while giving their call sign and ignoring Q code abbreviations. In a post-nuclear world, we need discipline and comprehensible communications, he barked. Everyone rolled their eyes, preparing for another trip to nowhere on the high seas. Join us for the first post-apocalyptic film on the beach from 1959. It has Gregory Peck in it, by the way. Tonight at 10:30 p.m. It's a real movie, everybody. We have a real movie. At least that's what they claimed it was. It showed in like 12 countries or something, including Russia, all simultaneously. At any rate, it's a Stanley Kramer film. Go look him up. He's an A-list director. And this is KE5ICX and Net Control for tonight's Skynet. Let's see. Let's move down the list. Do we have anybody from the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas who would like to talk about what's up at TAS? Please come with your call.
KF5JHA. KF5JHA. Chaz, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. The next Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting will be held on Friday, September the 24th at 7:30 p.m. The meeting was originally scheduled to be in person, but due to the rise in COVID cases, it's been switched to a Zoom meeting. The scheduled speaker is not able to attend the meeting because they were going to be live. So right now, the only thing scheduled for the meeting is the annual elections. The Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club members will receive an email link to the Zoom meeting in advance of the meeting. And Saturday night public observing sessions had started up, but now have been placed on hold again because of COVID. The one reason, at least one of the reasons I should say, that Skynet was picked to be on Saturday nights was so that there was an opportunity for live reports from the TAS public observing sessions, which are also held on Saturday nights, but right now they're on hold. If you want to get more information about the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas, go to their website, texasastro.org, and you get up-to-date information about what's going on, about meetings and public observing sessions. Thank you, Tom. This is KF5JHA.
Thank you, Chas, and yes, the Echolink is hopelessly lost tonight. I'm sorry, everyone. If you can hear me, you can go ahead and go to Facebook or YouTube and listen there. That audio is from a different radio, different system, and you should be able to hear it. DARC Skynet, that's all you have to put in. You'll find it. Might be a little better if you're outside the repeater area. Sorry about that. It was working fine until the net. It's like, what do you expect, I guess. Okay, next up is the National Space Society Events and Activities. Bill, N5BB, what do you have for us this evening from KE5ICX?
Okay, Tom, this is N5BB. I happen to be the membership director of the local National Space Society chapter. We normally meet on the second Sunday of every month at 3:30 p.m. and our presentations are at 4. This month, our meeting is tomorrow afternoon, and the speaker is a professor at SMU, Southern Methodist University, a researcher, and he will talk about measuring the temperature of the moon and planets, various ways that are being used to measure the temperature. So if you'd like to visit our WebEx, it'll be virtual on WebEx. If you'd like to visit our meeting, you can get you can get a reservation by sending me an email at one of these two email addresses, either space@byram.net, that's SPACE at byrom.net or N5BB at ARRL.net. And I would be happy to send you a reservation for a guest appearance at our meeting tomorrow. Again, the presentation will be from 4 to 5 p.m. On WebEx. And we have no local activities because we're kind of shut down for WebEx, due to COVID again. As soon as things get a little bit less hot, we will get back to in-person activities at universities and schools and things, museums. It reminds me of their movie tonight. You just can't get out and get around. This is N5BB. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, I know. We're getting all discouraged about the whole thing, but maybe things will pick up a little bit later on. I don't know. We'll see. Looked like we were out of it, and then we're back in it again. And this is KE5ICX. I'm net control for tonight's Skynet. Let's see. Tonight's discussion topic of the evening is something that actually kind of came up because I started on a new book. It's not a new book. It's an old book. It was written in 1980. It's called Skywatchers of Ancient Mexico, written by Anthony Aveni. Now, Anthony's still with us. He's still doing books about what is called Archaeoastronomy, which is quite interesting. I got this book. I'm going to hold it up for anybody who's watching the Echo Link. There's the book. I bought this at an antique store about 5 years ago, and I finally decided to read it. So I got through the first chapter, actually this morning, and I thought, you know what? This may be fun to talk about. So there was an online article as well that came up from a fellow in Italy, and I borrowed from it because I've got a whole book to read, so I had to do something that was fairly quick. But I did kind of put a couple of things together. So this is what I said. I said, tonight, I'd like to talk about an interesting look at archaeoastronomy, the use and study of ancient civilizations and their fixation with the stars. Tonight I will introduce you to archaeoastronomy and one of the most recognized objects in the nighttime sky, the Pleiades cluster. So here's a brief introduction. It comes from the article that I was telling you about, and it says as follows. The study of archaeological practices, celestial lore, mythologies, religions, and worldviews of all ancient cultures we call archaeoastronomy. We like to describe it as essence and anthropology of astronomy, to distinguish it from the history of astronomy. Yes, they're two different things. You may already know that many of the great moments in ceremonial constructions of early civilizations were astronomically aligned. The accurate cardinal orientation of the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt, or the Venus alignment of the magnificent Maya palace of the governor of Uxmal in Yucatan are outstanding examples. We learn much about the development of science and cosmological thought from the study of both the ancient astronomies and surviving indigenous traditions from around the world. With its roots in the Stonehenge discoveries of the 1960s, archaeoastronomy and ethnoastronomy, the study of contemporary native astronomies, have blossomed into active interdisciplinary fields that are providing new perspectives for the history of our species' interaction with the cosmos. One hallmark of the new research is active cooperation between professionals and amateurs from many backgrounds and cultures. The benefit of this cooperation has been the archaeoastronomy has expanded to include interrelated interest in ancient and native calendar systems, concepts of time and space, mathematics, counting systems, and geometry, surveying, and navigational techniques, as well as the geomancy and the origins of urban planning. Wow. We feel the excitement of the synergy that results with these new syntheses are more than the sum of their parts. Our subject is essentially a study of anthropology of astronomy and worldviews and the role of astronomy and astronomers in their cultures. And as I mentioned, I'm currently reading the first edition of Skywatchers of Ancient Mexico. And you see me holding up a copy of the book, published in 1980. Let's see here. It was sort of born out of, although this had been around for a while, Eric von Daniken's Chariot of the Gods, suggesting that not only was mathematics and science an important part of Mayan and Aztec society, but also an exact science needed to predict the coming of seasons for planting, weather, and all manner of predictions. Astronomy is an integral part of society, something lost on us in the modern folks who rarely look at the sky, nor pay attention to the changes of the seasons via a cavalcade of constellations traversing the night sky. So the point of this is, when I said von Daniken is that it's impossible that people could come up with this stuff, that they would be able to look at the sky and understand what was up there. They were too stupid. Wrong. Understanding the meaning of major celestial objects such as Venus, the evening and morning star, which signaled the possible incarnation of evil spirits with its appearance in the modern morning sky, made it people would close off their cooking chimneys, this is the Mayans, to prevent spirits from arriving. They're using Pleiades star cluster as a correction in a calendar where 12 transits of the moons were not enough to explain the differences from 27 days per transit, yielding 324-day year. That's not going to work. Pleiades helped to correct the calendar. So why this and why mention it? Well, the thing is, too, is you've got to remember that a lot of the astronomy, which is a science or is understood as a science, also coincided very closely with astrology and its meaning, which is that the prediction of where planets were and where stars were in the sky and objects that were in the sky were portent of things to come, things that could be bad, things that could be good. But it also provided good information, such as knowing when to plant, when to harvest, and when are the rains coming? By looking in the sky, you could find the exact time and then learn from it. So tonight, I'm going to give a little bit about the Pleiades star cluster, the Seven Sisters. Its popularity and is recognizable by just about anyone looking upward, and there are many, many tales and reasons why it's so important to people of all ages. Let's begin with the history and recognition of the star group. Also known as the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades is an open cluster in the constellation of Taurus. These stars are among the nearest star clusters and the most obvious to the naked eye. Blue stars, observed through a faint nebulosity of dust cloud in the interstellar median, which the stars are currently passing through, dominate the cluster. The brightest stars of the cluster are named the Seven Sisters of Greek mythology. These are the daughters of Atlas and Pleione. Pursued by Orion, they were rescued by Zeus, who immortalized the sisters by placing them in the sky. Due to the high visibility, these stars gained a special place in many ancient cultures. They are the winter stars in the northern hemisphere and summer stars in the southern. We can tell these stars were known since old times by several cultures all around the world, including the Maori and Australian Aborigines, the Chinese, Mayan, Aztec, and native people of North America. The Pleiades are particularly important in Hindu mythology as the 6 wives of the 6 sages. The number is not fixed, but changing in the mist between 6 and 7. Of course, representations of these stars in the local mythologies are different, but a rather common element in their female nature. For example, in one of the Maori traditions, Matariki, the Maori name for the cluster of stars, is the mother with her 6 daughters. The Sioux of North America, with a legend linking the origins of Pleiades to the Devil's Tower, the first 7 women pursued by a bear. They prayed the gods who raised the ground where they were located high into the air to save them from the bear. The maidens then turned into stars. The Pleiades are mentioned in Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. In the Greek myths, several of Olympian gods were engaged in the 7 heavenly sisters. Merope, the youngest of the 7 Pleiades married Cepheus and became mortal, faded away. This is known as the myth. It explains why the Pleiades star clusters are only 6 of the stars shine brightly, and the 7th, Merope, shines dully. The Pleiades start to shine over the horizon set in the west during October and November, the proper time of the year in the Mediterranean area to plow and sow the land. As prominent stars in the Greek agricultural calendar, Hesiod, the poet who lived around 700 BC, mentions the Pleiades several times in his poems and works and days. All right, Chad's going to hit me. I have here, it says the helical and acronocal rising. The helical rising of a star or of a constellation occurs when it becomes visible above the eastern horizon at dawn, after a period when it is hidden below the horizon. A corresponding rising of the celestial body above the eastern horizon at nightfall is its acronocal rising. Constellations that rise and set were then used for calendars for ancient peoples and used to form a zodiac. As highly visible heliacal stars, the Pleiades were among the most important celestial body after the moon and used for a first astronomic conception. The Pleiades heliacal rising is widely recognized in astro regions as the beginning of the new year and then of agricultural season. To the Maori of New Zealand, their heliacal rising signifies the beginning of a new year. For the Bronze Age people of Europe, the Pleiades started to be associated with mourning and funerals. Between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice, the cluster rose to the eastern sky after the sunset. For the Celtic population, these stars were the window into the other world. Not surprisingly, this rising was coincident with the festival devoted to the remembrances of the dead people. As a result of processions over the centuries, the Pleiades no longer mark the festival, but the association nonetheless exists. The Nebula disk is usually considered one of the oldest representations of the Pleiades, and I have a picture of it up if you're watching the video. An artifact dated 1600 BC, the bronze disk from Nebra in Germany, is usually considered one of the oldest known representations of the sky, where Pleiades is at the top right. The disk is a Bronze Age, and as shall we see in the next section, there are much older paintings depicting the Pleiades in the sky. The Paleolithic timekeepers, it is necessary to recognize this fact, that we have representation of stars of considerably earlier epochs. The Archaeoastronomy affirmed that the Paleolithic man was able to follow prominent patterns of stars. In the Paleolithic epochs, which lapsed from 33,000 to 10,000 BP before present, that's a new one on me, the ancient cultures were able to develop calendars as demonstrated by marks on transportable bones and stones and paintings on walls of caves. And I have now up the Celestial Herd Cave painting, one of the most famous, by M.A. Raben-Gluck, showed that man was also recognized, among the others, the Pleiades, as is shown in the paintings of the cave of Lascaux, France. The famous caves with all of those paintings. The constellations were used by the Paleolithic hunter-gatherers for orientation in space and for time reckoning. Of course, the patterns of the stars in the sky assumed an important role in spiritual life. A panel of the cave with a combination of Aldebaran and the bull and the Pleiades, the picture has a remarkable similarity with the representations in the Lascaux cave. A female bovine, probably an aurochs cow, is depicted in red ochre. That's the color. 3 groups of dots are related to this animal. One is a group of 7 points situated over the body. Note that the bovine image is representing a female, not a male bovine. Aurochs with the 6 spots may represent the Taurus constellation with Pleiades above. And if you're looking at the And there's a picture of the cave painting, and then what astronomically you would see if you looked up in the sky. The eye of the bovine marks Aldebaran. The name means he who follows in Arabic, since the star follows the Pleiades in apparent motion, with a cluster of dots in the face of the animal is related to the cluster of Hyades. The cow image in La Tête du Lion, the lion cave, has a prominent dot which marks Aldebaran and 7 points representing the Pleiades. To prove the hypothesis, the author compares this image with depictions of Pleiades due to different ancient cultures, Chinese and Navajo. The Pleiades phases, depending on epochs and moon position, permit to determine the starting points of the lunar and solar years and the subdivision of these years into shorter time intervals. This leads to the fractionating the ecliptic into houses. At around 2300 BC, the Pleiades was the starting point of the house corresponding to the spring equinox for ancient Chinese and Indians. The second house of the Indian lunar zodiac is referring to the red cow, Aldebaran, and it may be reminiscent of the Paleolithic Archeoastronomy constellation. And then finally, the ancient Chinese, approximately about 2300 BC, started to celebrate the full moon passing of Pleiades at the autumnal equinox. This tradition is an excellent illustration of similar rites that we can imagine as being performed by hunter-gatherers at Paleolithic times, linked to the life cycles of aurochs. To support this ideal, Ravensbrück mentioned the traditions of some of the natives of North America connected the cylindrical year of Pleiades with the life cycles of bison. To reinforce Ravensbrück's idea, we can add the fact that Turkish and Mongol people related the beginning of the seasons to the appearance and disappearance of the Pleiades at the horizon, devoting a number of rituals to such events. As nomad cattlemen, the Kazakhs coordinated their activities, mainly consisting in cattle breeding and hunting, with seasons of the year. Urker, or the Pleiades, has a predominating position among other heavenly bodies in their calendar. Next time we'll look at other celestial objects and discuss their importance early and to even contemporary man. So there's plenty with this. We haven't even touched on eclipses, conjunctions, planetary movement, all sorts of other things, including the Milky Way itself and dark areas that are also considered constellations of sorts, void areas, in fact. There's a lot here. There's a lot to discuss. There's a whole book I'm going through right now. I'm currently in Chapter 2. I just started it this morning, and it has to do with your position on Earth and how it relates to positions of stars as seen. And that means that some of the observing places in the world that are ancient also have a different, slightly different view of some of the constellations that we see in the sky. So we'll do that next time, whenever next time is, probably next month, unless I'm back earlier. And this is KE5ICX. I'm net control for tonight's Skynet. All right, as you can tell, I think allergies are playing havoc with me tonight, so forgive me. I may have to drop and hack a little bit. But we're going to move on to What's Up with Chaz. So, Chaz, tell us what's up tonight from KE5I6.
This is KF5JHA Chaz. Tom, you can't be the hack because that's my job. Okay, Slide Master. Oh, by the way, the Slide Master is Tom. This is Chaz, KF5JHA. My degree is in astrophysics. I'm in charge of the astrophysics lab at Dallas College on the Brookhaven campus, and we call this segment of Skynet What's Up. Slide number 2, Slide Master. On September the 6th, the moon was new, so the current phase of the moon is a waxing crescent. Today, on September the 11th, the moon is at perigee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is closest to the Earth. On September the 13th, in a couple of days, the moon will be at its first quarter phase. On September 20th, the moon will be full. Slide number 3, please. On September 16th, in the southeastern evening sky, you can find the moon close to Saturn. This conjunction is less than 5 degrees apart. And let's see now, slide number 4, please. The very next night, on September the 17th, the moon is next to the planet Jupiter. Jupiter is much brighter than Saturn, so this will take a much more, make it a much more dramatic view. Slide number 5, please. September the 22nd is the autumnal equinox. The autumnal equinox occurs at 8:30 a.m. Central Daylight Time on that day, September the 22nd. The sun will shine directly ahead on the equator, and there will be nearly equal amounts of day and night throughout the entire world on that day. This is also the first day of fall, autumnal equinox, in the northern hemisphere, and the first day of spring, vernal equinox, in the southern hemisphere. And on this day, the sun rises east and sets west everywhere on the Earth. And this is KF5JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide number 6, please. Once again, the next Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting will be held on Friday, September the 24th at 7:30 p.m. The meeting was scheduled to be in person, but again, it's going to be virtual because of the increase in COVID. A featured speaker is not scheduled at this point because the original one was going to attend in person, but that's all changed. And the public observing sessions have been put on pause as well because of COVID. But if you want to get updated information about the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas, go to their website, texasastro.org. Slide number 7, please, Slide Master. Now, do any of you out there in Radio Land have a question or need a fill on any of the information, or do you just have a general astronomy question? I don't know everything, but I may know the answer to your question. Come now with your call sign if you have a question. Okay, hearing nothing. Just to let you know, Kelly, you and I need to help Tom out. It's Spica. I think we've got him trained on that one. And the next one we need to help him out with is heliacal. It means the same thing as Helios. Okay, so heliacal. Helios. Okay, all right, there we go. So Slide Master, slide number 8. So as the moon waned at the beginning of September, so do these words for this segment of Skynet. Stay safe, keep well, pray for our world. That's the only one where humans live. And until next week, actually I'll be doing another segment if Net Control lets me do this in a few minutes. Keep looking up so you know what's up. And this is KF5JHA Chaz. Back to our Net Control Tom, KE5ICX.
Well, thank you, Chaz. And yes, there are plenty of words, both the scientific ones and the ancient origins, Arabic and Greek, and you name it. There are so many words that I think there should be a book, and there probably is one, on how to properly pronounce anything that is astronomy related. It's out there somewhere. I just have a feeling. So let's see here. Let's take a quick break, see if we have any additional check-ins now. I'm going to look on Echolink just to see the normal folks are there. Well, the abnormal folks are there. Any additional check-ins, please come with your call sign name, where you're transmitting from.
November 5, Oscar Foxtrot, Columbus Street.
Kilo Golf 5 Alpha Papa Lima, Patrick in Dallas.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Zulu, Bravo, Lima, Bill.
All right, not bad. I've got N5OF, Clay over in Mesquite, KG5APL, that's Patrick in Dallas, NT5TM Tony, also in Dallas, and K5ZBL Bill, I believe he's in Farmers Branch. I got y'all checked in. Okay, next up is Miss Kelly. She has space exploration and space history this week, so Kelly, K5KTX, you're up from KE5ICX.
This is K5KTX, and Chaz, please don't judge me, but the news that I'm going to bring tonight, I don't know what it is about JPL, but they just like to name things, rocks and stations on Mars with words that are difficult to pronounce, so I'm going to do my best. But NASA's Perseverance Mars rover successfully collected its first pair of rock samples, and scientists are already gaining new insights into the region. After collecting its first sample, named Denier, September the 6th, the team collected a second, Montagnac, from the same rock on September the 8th. The rock is named Rochette. That I can pronounce. Analysis of the rocks from which the Montagnac and Montagnac samples were taken, and from the rover's previous sampling attempt, may help the science team piece together the timeline of the area's past, which was marked by volcanic activity and periods of persistent water. The rock that provided the mission's first core samples is basaltic in composition and may be the product of lava flows. The presence of crystalline minerals in volcanic rocks is especially helpful in radiometric dating. The volcanic origin of the rock could help scientists accurately date when it was formed. Each sample can serve as a part of a larger chronological puzzle. Put them in the right order, and scientists have a timeline of the most important events in the crater's history. Some of those events include the formation of Jezero crater, the emergence and disappearance of Jezero's lake, and changes to the planet's climate in the ancient past. What's more, salts have been spied within these rocks. These salts may have formed when groundwater flowed through and altered the original minerals in the rock, or, more likely, when liquid water evaporated, leaving the salts. The salt minerals in these first two rock cores may also have trapped tiny bubbles of ancient Martian water. If present, they could serve as microscopic time capsules, clues about the ancient climate and habitability of Mars. Salt minerals are also well known on Earth for their ability to preserve signs of ancient life. The Perseverance science team already knew a lake once filled the crater. For how long has been more uncertain. The scientists couldn't dismiss the possibility that Jezero's lake was a flash in the pan. Floodwaters could have rapidly filled the impact crater and dried up in the space of 50 years, for example. But the level of alteration that scientists see in the rock that provided the core samples, as well as in the rock the team targeted on their first sample acquisition attempt, suggests that groundwater was present for a long time. This groundwater could have been related to the lake that was once in Jezero, or it could have traveled through the rocks long after the lake had dried up. Though scientists still can't say whether any of the water that altered these rocks was present for tens of thousands or for millions of years, they are certain that it was there for long enough to make the area more welcoming to microscopic life in the past. These samples have high value for future laboratory analysis back on Earth. One day, scientists may be able to work out the sequence and timing of the environmental conditions that this rock's minerals represent. This will help answer the big picture science question of the history and stability of liquid water on Mars. Perseverance is currently searching the crater floor for samples that can be brought back to Earth to answer profound questions about Mars's history. Promising samples are sealed in titanium tubes the rover carries in his chassis, where they'll be stored until Perseverance drops them to be retrieved by a future mission. Perseverance will likely create multiple depots later in the mission, where it will drop samples for a future mission to bring to Earth. Having one or more depots increases the likelihood that especially valuable samples will be accessible for retrieval to Earth. Perseverance's next likely sample site is just 656 feet away in South Zeta, a series of ridges covered by sand dunes, boulders, and rock shards that look like broken dinner plates. The rover's recent drill sample represents what is likely one of the youngest rock layers that can be found on Jezero crater's floor. South Zeta, on the other hand, is likely older and will provide the science team a better timeline to understand events that shape the crater floor, including its lake. By the start of October, all Mars missions will be standing down from commanding their spacecraft for several weeks, a protective measure during a period called Mars solar conjunction. Perseverance isn't likely to drill in South Zeta until sometime after that period. While we're talking about Mars, the Ingenuity helicopter that went to Mars with Perseverance just completed its 13th flight last Saturday. It captured images of the South Zeta region for aerial scouting to aid rover planning. Now, in space history this past week, several very interesting things. September the 5th, back in 1977, some of you may remember this important date. At 8:56 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Voyager 1 lifted off from Launch Complex 41 at Cape Canaveral, Florida. Voyager 1 would fly by Jupiter in March of 1979 and Saturn in November 1980. Voyager 1 is now in interstellar space, so far away that radio signals take over 20 hours to reach Earth. On September the 6th, back in 1996, NASA's Galileo spacecraft conducted its second flyby of Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon. The Galileo spacecraft's mission, which first launched in 1989, was to study the moons of Jupiter and derived its name from Galileo Galilei. Ganymede is one of the 4 Galilean moons because it was one of the 4 moons first observed by Galileo in around 1609 to 1610. Through Galileo's telescopes, Ganymede appeared as a small, moving point which could easily be mistaken as a star. But the Galileo spacecraft, with its many scientific instruments and cameras, revealed Ganymede to be an entire world, complete with its own magnetosphere and even a subsurface ocean. Also on September the 6th, back in 2013, the Lunar Atmosphere and Dust Environment Explorer, or LADEE, probe was launched from Pad OB of the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport at NASA's Wallops Flight Facility, Wallops Island, Virginia. It was the first payload to launch on a U.S. Air Force Monitor 5 rocket integrated by Orbital Sciences Corp., and the first deep space mission to launch from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center's Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. LADEE was a robotic mission that orbited the moon to gather detailed information about the structure and composition of the thin lunar atmosphere and determine whether dust is lofted into the lunar sky. The probe orbited the moon for 7 months, and at the end of the mission was intentionally crashed into the far side of the moon on April the 18th, 2014. On September the 7th, back in 1914, American astrophysicist James Van Allen was born. Van Allen was a pioneer in early space exploration. For the International Geophysical Year of 1957 to 58, he proposed several ideas for experiments conducted by satellites. The International Geophysical Year was an international collaborative project designed to promote progress in the geophysical sciences, during which both American and Soviet scientists developed proposals for satellites. Unfortunately, Van Allen's proposals were initially ignored by the U.S. After the launch of Sputnik, however, Van Allen's proposals to launch an American satellite were quickly approved, and Explorer 1 first U.S. satellite was launched in January 1958, just 4 months after the launch of Sputnik. Thanks to data collected by Explorer 1 and later Explorer 3, scientists were able to confirm the existence of a zone of radiation held by the Earth's magnetic field, which were then named the Van Allen belts. And this one is for you, Tom. September the 8th, 1966, Star Trek aired its first episode. Although Star Trek depicted a fantasy future Earth in which humans and other intelligent species freely explored the universe on Galaxy-class starships, in the real world, humanity was similarly taking its first steps to boldly go where no one had gone before. Star Trek's influence on NASA was far-reaching. In 1976, thanks to a letter-writing campaign by Star Trek fans, NASA named the first space shuttle Enterprise after the Star Trek starship led by Captain James T. Kirk. And if you're watching the slideshow on YouTube, the photo of the Enterprise that's on this slide is a scratch-built model built by a longtime Texas Astronomical Society member, Jason Ware. It's incredible work. On September the 10th, 2011, at Cape Canaveral, the Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory Spacecraft, or GRAIL, was sent on its journey to the Moon. The twin spacecraft studied the gravitational field of the Moon for clues about its history and of collisions with other space objects, and for desirable landing sites for future missions. And finally, this past week, we had several astronaut birthdays, starting with 2 on September the 6th. September 6, 1946, Brian O'Connor, who was on Space Shuttle missions STS-61B and STS-40. Also, 1955 was Carl Wolf, who was on a bunch of Space Shuttle missions, 51, 65, 79, 108, and I'm assuming that 108 he went up to the space station, he was part of Expedition 4, and then came back down on STS-111. On September the 7th, 1939, David Griggs, who was on Space Shuttle mission STS-51D. September the 9th, 1952, Lee Morin, who was on Space Shuttle mission STS-110. I had the meeting him back in 2014 for the Orion EFT-1 launch. And I believe if he's still doing this, he was working on the software that manages the astronaut computers on the Orion spacecraft. So he's still active in space. September the 10th, 1945, Mike Mullane, who was on Space Shuttle missions STS-41D, STS-27, and STS-36. And if you're on Facebook, if you go to if you're part of the Space Hipsters Facebook group, which I highly recommend, both Mike and his son Patrick are active, fairly regularly contributors to that group. So you might want to check that out. And then we have two STS-1, also STS-7, STS-41C, and STS-41G. And then September the 11th, 1967 was Randy Bresnik, who was on Space Shuttle mission STS-129 and part of Expedition 52 and 53. And that's all I've got this evening. This is K5 KTX.
Well, thank you, Miss Kelly, and thanks very much for doing that report. By the way, if you want to check your signal, something happened just at the very end, but you got everything in. You got it 100%. But your signal started to fade on the last end of it. So you want to check your radio. This is KE5ICF Net Control tonight. Skynet. Next up is Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week, which means Chaz is back. Yes, he's back. Just like a bad penny, but he is back. So, Chaz, you're next with Miss Constellation's Carrollton of the Week. No, Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week. Let's try that again. Go ahead, Chaz, from KE5ICX.
Good evening, everyone. I hope my signal's coming through because, Tom, your signal was getting scratchy too. It might be the repeater that's having a problem. I don't know. Oh, yeah, I'm clear on Echolink too. Okay, oh well. Yeah, I don't know. So, Kelly, I wanted to let you know, I have new expanded responsibilities now at Brookhaven, and I'm now going to be taking charge of all of the geology stuff, so I'm going to have to start learning how to pronounce those rocks too, so all of you can make fun of me with that. And also, I try to pronounce some of these Arabic names for stars in the sky, and I'm sure I mess those things up all the time. Anyway, all right, so Miss Carolyn's constellation of the week is named in honor of Carolyn, silent key KC5OZT. She contributed to Skynet each week from almost its beginning in 2012 until May of 2019 with a detailed look at one particular constellation each week. Since there are about 52 easily visible constellations seen in Texas throughout the year, out of the 88 total constellations, so Miss Carolyn covered the entire sky in a year. In her honor, we have continued that tradition of a constellation per week and named this segment after her. Miss Carolyn's constellation of this week is actually a two-for special, Vulpecula, the Little Fox, and Sagitta, the Arrow. So this is what all of you have been waiting for, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm amassing many geology jokes, JJ. He's over here commenting on Echolink. Okay, the reason why you're all here is because of the jokes of the week. Slide Master, slide number 10. How can you tell if an arrow is nervous? Well, you look to see if it quivers. Okay, let's try another one. Why does the arrow on the computer screen use a lot of profanity? It's because it's a cursor. All right, how do you improve your archery? How do you improve your archery skills? With a much better aerodynamics. Better aerodynamics. Oh, okay. All right, well, that's about the arrow. Now we've got to do some jokes about foxes. Why were the foxes hunting rabbits? Because they were in the mood for fast food. Why was the fox stuck in the past? Because it was a 20th century fox. And the last one for this part anyway, where did the fox go to buy a new tail? Of course, to the retail store. And this is KF5JHA. Slide Master, slide number 11, please. Sagitta. This constellation has been described as an arrow since ancient times by various cultures. The arrow itself is linked with various myths as well, but the most common-sided one is the arrow that Hercules used to kill the eagle sent by Zeus to torture Prometheus for giving the gift of fire to man. Try to say that all at one breath. Slide number 12, please. This one says Sham. In fact, that's the name of the star, Sham, Alpha Sagitta. The name Sham is derived from the Arabic. Okay, here I go. I'm going to try one of these Arabic names. Al-Sham, which means the arrow. And Sham is designated as Alpha Sagitta. It is actually the third brightest star in the constellation at magnitude 4.4. The brightest star in Sagitta is Gamma Sagitta at magnitude 3.5. Gamma is the star that forms the arrow's head. Sham is the other end of the arrow, forming part of the feathers. Slide number 13, please. M71 is generally considered to be a globular cluster today, though for decades there was controversy whether it was a dense open cluster or a loose globular cluster. In binoculars, M71 can be carefully picked out of the Milky Way background as a small, faint glow. Slide number 14, please. NGC 6886 is the Planetary Nebula. It's one of those many planetaries, so small they look like stars until you really crank up the magnification. Large aperture helps, like Dave Hutchinson's 16-inch Dob. With his scope, Dave writes that he is fairly confident that he was able to find it. At 300 power, he said it appears to be non-stellar. In other words, a little bit of size to it. And this is KF5JJ, and this is Skynet. Slide master, slide number 15, please. The constellation of Vulpecula, the Fox, was originally created in the year of 1687 by the Polish astronomer Johannes Helvetius to fill in some space in between Cygnus and Sagittarius. If you arrange all 88 constellations alphabetically, Vulpecula is the very last one on the list, so it appears at the very end of the last volume of Burnham's Celestial Handbook. Vulpecula is the 55th constellation in size, occupying only 268 square degrees. Slide number 16, please. Alpha Vulpeculae. It's also known as 6 Vulpecula. It's a red giant star that is about 250 light years away. It shines at magnitude 4.4, as seen from the Earth. In binoculars, a comparison star can be seen that is not noticeable to the unaided eye. This star is 8 Vulpecula, an orange giant star that shines about magnitude 5.8. The two stars form a visible double only. They are not a true binary system. This star is easy to split and an 80 millimeter short focal refractor, which is about the same as a typical binoculars. In a telescope, alpha looks yellow, while 8 looks yellow-orange. Okay, so this is sort of a pop quiz and a trivia. The proper name for Alpha Orionis is... Come on, I hear you screaming out there. Betelgeuse. Okay. What's the proper name for Alpha Leonis? Brightest star in Leo. Regulus. What's the proper name for Alpha Lyra? Brightest star in Lyra is Vega. Alpha Vulpecula has a proper name too. Do you know what it is? It's called Answer. Answer is Latin for goose, which derives from the fact that Helvetius' original name for this constellation was Vulpecula cum Answer, and that means a little fox with a goose. Indeed, these pictorial star atlases show this constellation with a drawing of a fox bearing a goose in its mouth. So one more time, what's the proper name for Alpha Vulpecula? Well, it's Answer. So you might say the question answers itself. Yeah, all that for just a joke, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay, slide number 17, please. Calendar 399 is also known as the coat hanger. It can be seen with the unaided eye from a dark sky sight as an unresolved patch of light, as easily to resolve into its depictive, or distinctive, I should say, coat hanger shape with even a small telescope, making it an easy binocular or finder scope object. It looks great in an 80 millimeter short refractor. In a Dynamax 8 at 41 power, its lowest power, it takes about 3 fields of view side by side to see it all. Can't see it all at once. The 6 stars in the hook are in the field of view in this size scope. In this respect, the coat hanger is somewhat like the Pleiades, an object that's best viewed at low power and wide field instruments like binoculars. For many years, the coat hanger was thought to be an open star cluster, but recent studies have shown that it's not a true cluster after all, but it in reality is just a chance alignment of stars. Slide master, slide number 18, please. Now, do you want to take a look at something dumb? Okay, this is another bad joke. M27 is the iconic dumbbell nebula discovered by Charles Messier himself on July 1764. Burnham's Celestial Handbook describes M27 as the most conspicuous planetary nebula in the entire sky for small instruments. With a total magnitude of about 8, it can easily be found in large binoculars. The large apparent size of this nebula classifies it as possibly one of the nearest of the planetaries. Current estimates of its distance place it about 815 light years away. And this is KF5JJ, and this is Skynet. Slide number 19, please. There are more Astronomical League observing program objects in the constellation of Vulpecula, the Little Fox, and Sagitta the Eero. I've just given you a sampling of some of those objects. The Astronomical League has about 73 different observing program from which there are about 100 of objects in each one. If you observe just 10 different objects in an observing program each month, then you can earn an observing certificate and a pin in about a year. Slide Master, slide number 20, please. And that is Miss Carolyn's constellation of the week, Vulpecula, the Fox, and Sagitta the Eero. I want to thank my friends Dave Hutchinson and Dennis Harwell for their research and words on deep sky objects that I use, borrow, and steal almost every Skynet. And also at times I use the website constellation-guide.com for information as well. Next time I'm going to take a look at just a single constellation, Cygnus the Swan. Oh, and before I give it back to net control, heliacal, helium, okay. Helium, yes. Helium is connected to all this heliacal and helios. Helium was first observed on August 18th, 1868. It was seen as the bright yellow line in the spectrum of the sun, and that's the first time they'd ever seen it, so they connected it with the sun and called it helium. So, okay, bit of trivia. This is KF5JJ sending it back to our net control, KE5ICX. How do you pronounce your name?
Oh, most people pronounce it as mud, but and not hardcore Fenton. Okay, thank you, Chaz. I think that was interesting. I think Cygnus the Swan next week. And if it's nighttime, would it be the Black Swan? I don't know. Okay, this is KE5ICX. Let's see. Next up is space launches for the week. Let me see what we got. We have today is the 11th, so September 13th. We have a launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. SLC-4E, Falcon 9 rocket, will launch the first dedicated mission with Starlink Internet satellites from Vandenberg Space Force Base. This mission will deploy an unspecified number of Starlink satellites into high inclination orbit. On September 14th, we have OneWeb 10, a Soyuz launch from Baikonur Cosmodrome, Kazakhstan. The Soyuz rocket will launch 34 satellites into orbit for OneWeb, which is developing a constellation of hundreds of satellites in Earth orbit for low-latency broadband communications. September 15th, 16th, at Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center. The SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket will launch a Crew Dragon spacecraft on the first all-private orbital mission without any government-employed astronauts. The mission, known as Inspiration 4, is organized to raise money for the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. The mission is commanded by billionaire Jared Isaacman, who will be joined by scientist and educator Sian Proctor, medical officer Haley Arkano, and mission specialist Christopher Sombrowski. By the way, I think this is actually going to be delayed one day, if I remember correctly, so it may be the 16th, although they may have taken that into account here. September 23rd. Well, the Landsat 9 mission off of Atlas V. This is from SLC-3E at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. The United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket will launch the Landsat 9 Earth observation satellite for NASA and the U.S. Geological Survey. Built by Northrop Grumman, Landsat 9 will continue a series of Landsat images of Earth dating back nearly 50 years. The rocket will fly in the 401 vehicle formation with 4-meter fairing, no solid rocket boosters, and the single-engine Centaur upper stage. Then in September, we have a Long March 7, Tinsao 3 from Wuchang, China. The Long March 7 will launch Tinsao 3 resupply ship to dock with the Chinese space station. The automated cargo craft is the second resupply freighter for the Chinese space station. And then finally, September 30th or October 1st, the Epsilon Rise 2 launch. This will be from Uchinora Space Center in Japan. The Japanese Epsilon rocket will launch a Rapid Innovative Payload Demonstration Satellite 2, or RAISE-2, technology demonstration satellite for the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency. The 8 smaller rideshare payloads will also be on this launch. And that's it from there. So let's go to Miss Brenda, WB5OZL. What do you have for us for recent astronomical discoveries?
Thank you, Tom. This is WB5OZL. The title of this article is Surprise, the Milky Way is not homogeneous. In order to better understand the history and evolution of the Milky Way, astronomers are studying the composition of the gases and metals that make up an important part of our galaxy. The three main elements stand out. The initial gas coming from outside our galaxy, the gas between the stars inside our galaxy, enriched with chemical elements, and the dust created by the condensation of the metals present in this gas. Until now, theoretical models assumed that these three elements were homogeneously mixed throughout the Milky Way and reached a level of chemical enrichment similar to the Sun's atmosphere, called the solar metallicity. Today, a team of astronomers from the University of Geneva, UNIGE, demonstrates that these gases are not mixed as much as previously thought, which has a strong impact on the current understanding of the evolution of galaxies. As a result, simulations of the Milky Way's evolution will have to be modified. These results can be read in the journal Nature. Galaxies are made up of a collection of stars that are formed by the condensation of the gas of the intergalactic medium composed of mostly hydrogen and a bit of helium. This gas does not contain metals like the gas in galaxies. In astronomy, all chemical elements heavier than helium are collectively called metals, although they are atoms in gaseous form. Galaxies are fueled by virgin gas that falls in from the outside, which rejuvenates them and allows new stars to form, explains Annalisa Dacia, a professor in the Department of Astronomy at the UNIGE Faculty of Science and first author of the study. At the same time, stars burn the hydrogen that constitutes them throughout their life and form other elements through nucleosynthesis. When a star that has reached the end of its life explodes, it expels the metals it has produced, such as iron, zinc, carbon, and silicon, feeding these elements into the gas of the galaxy. These atoms can then condense into dust, especially in the colder, denser parts of the galaxy. Initially, when the Milky Way was formed... Oh, I lost my place. Hold on. More than 10 billion years ago, it had no metals. Then the stars gradually enriched the environment with the metals they produced, continues the researcher. When the amount of metals in this gas reaches a level that is present in the sun, astronomers speak of solar metallicity. The environment that makes up the Milky Way thus brings together the metals produced by the stars, the dust particles that have formed in these metals, and also gases from outside the galaxy that regularly enter it. Until now, through theoretical models, considered that these three elements were homogeneously mixed and reached the solar composition everywhere in our galaxy, with a slight increase in metallicity in the center, where the stars are more numerous, explains Patrick Pettigene, a researcher in the Institut d'Astrophysique de Paris, Sorbonne University. We wanted to observe this in detail using an ultraviolet spectrograph on the Hubble Space Telescope. I have such a hard time with this word. Spectroscopy allows the light from stars to be separated in its individual colors or frequencies, a bit like with a prism or in a rainbow. In this decomposed light, astronomers are particularly interested in absorption lines. When we observe a star, the metals that make up the gas between the star and ourselves absorb a very small part of the light in a characteristic way at a specific frequency, which allows us not only to identify their presence, but also say which metal it is and how abundant it is, he continues. For 25 hours, a team of scientists observed the atmosphere of 25 stars using Hubble and the Very Large Telescope in Chile. The problem, the dust cannot be counted with these spectrographs, even though it contains metals. Annalisa de Cia's team has therefore developed a new observational technique. It involves taking into account the total composition of the gas and dust by simultaneously observing several elements such as iron, zinc, titanium, silicon, and oxygen, explains a Geneva researcher. Then we can trace the quantity of metals present in the dust and add it to that already quantified by the previous observations to get the total. Thanks to this dual observation technique, the astronomers have found that not only is the Milky Way's environment non-homogeneous, but that some of the areas studied reach only 10% of the solar metallicity. This discovery plays a key role in the design of theoretical models on the formation and evolution of galaxies, says Jens Christian Kroggager, researcher at UNIGE's Department of Astronomy. From now on, we will have to refine the simulations by increasing the resolution so that we can include these changes in metallicity at different locations in the Milky Way. These results have a strong impact on our understanding of the evolution of galaxies and of our own in particular. Indeed, metals play a fundamental role in the formation of stars, cosmic dust, molecules, and planets. And now we know that new stars and planets could be formed today from gases with very different compositions. Okay, that's it. This is from ScienceDaily.com. This is WB5OZL. Back to net.
Very good. Thank you, Miss Brenda. And this is KE5ICX, net control for tonight's Skynet. I'll give you a couple of, satellite passes coming up. The International Space Station has several that are pretty good coming up. September 12th, that would be tomorrow, minus, let's see here, there's actually two passes. The best one is the second pass. Tomorrow morning, minus 3.4 magnitude at 6:23 a.m. It'll reach its highest point at 45 degrees at 6:26 at the southwest, and it'll fall at 6:29 to the south-southeast. Then on September 13th, the day after, is on Monday, that is, there are again two passes, but the good one is the first one, minus 3.9 magnitude at 5:40 a.m. This one is coming out of shadow, though. It's at 65 degrees, reaches its highest point at 5:40, and then falls at 5:44. The second pass, I might as well mention, since it's a full pass, but it's lower in the sky, minus 2.5 magnitude. This one, well, this is in the evening, I'm sorry. 2042 reaches its highest point at 2045 at 24 degrees, and then at 2045 it falls into shadow again. Boy, maybe I shouldn't have bothered with that one. Next up on the 15th is minus 3.5 magnitude. This is at 8:51 in the evening out of the southwest. Reaches its highest point in the northwest at 67 degrees, and then falls at 20:56. So a nice 5-minute pass, not bad at all. Then we have on September 18th, this one is, why did I mention that? Let's see here, that's not a good pass. Did I mention the 16th? Yes. Oh well, that's it. I I don't have anything else for that one. I don't know why I put 18th in. It's not a very good pass. Next is the X-37B, which is the winged spacecraft that is unmanned and in orbit and has been for over a year now. It has one very good pass on September 18th, 1.0 magnitude. It'll reach, it's at 6:41 a.m. out of the southwest, reach its highest point at 6:45, 63 degrees, and it'll fall at 6:48. The Envisat is always good. This is a dead satellite that was environmental satellite. It will do Earth resources stuff. Envisat is a number of very good passes because the size of the satellite, even though it's no longer in operation. September 13th, at 3.3 magnitude, it'll be 629, I'm sorry, out of the north-northeast. It reaches its highest point at 634. At 74 degrees out of the east-southeast, and it'll fall at 639.37. Then on the 16th, we have a pass. It's a 3.8 magnitude at 6:18 a.m. Reaches highest point at 6:23 at 56 degrees, and it'll fall at 6:28. Then finally, on September 18th, 3.0 magnitude, 6:43 a.m. It'll reach its highest point at 6:48 at 78 degrees, and it will fall at 6:53 southwest. All this information is available at Heavens Above. Just go there. It's heavens-above.com. Plug in your longitude and latitude. That will let the program know exactly where you are, and it will give you all visible satellite passes. It'll also give you amateur radio satellite passes as well, which is pretty nice. So if you're doing some AMSAT type amateur satellite contacts, you can get this information without using any special programs. This is KE5ICX. I'm going to go ahead and take final check-ins. Well, let me go ahead and ask. Anybody have any questions this evening before we do any final check-ins? Anything that you would like to bring to the net or have a question about, please come to your call sign. All right, how about final check-ins? Anybody who would like to join us who has not done so already, please come to your call sign phonetically, your name and where you're transmitting from. Final call.
KS5, J recheck, Coppell. Kilo Golf 5, Uniform Foxtrot Romeo, Jacob, Dallas.
All right, first off, let me get Joe. You don't know, but he checked in. He was having echo-link problems. He doesn't know that we were having echo-link problems. I'm at KG5ZMG. That's Joe in Arlington. I got John. I recognized his voice. K5JDW, John in Coppell. And then Jacob, KG5UFR over in Dallas. And then Chaz had a recheck. K5JJ, go ahead.
Sorry about that, John. I guess I stomped on you. Tom, I was just wanting to make sure that you got Joe, KG5ZMG.
Normal state.
Thanks.
Yes, I did. While you were busy jamming, John, I acknowledged him, so I've got him in there. Thank you very much. Anyone else want to check in? Now's the time. All right, tonight we had 24 hams participating on the air, including myself. Thanks to all who checked in this evening. We hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We're always looking for net control stations for this and all the other DARC nets. If you'd like to try your hand at this, contact any of the net controls by sending an email to nets@.
I'm completely operational and all my circuits are functioning perfectly.
Afterglow Movie Net.
General on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our audio, video streams, video archives, and other useful internet resources by going to w5fc.org at the conclusion of this net. Till next Saturday night, this is Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray Tom, and I'll be closing the net at 22:30 local time and returning the repeater to normal use. 7-3, everybody, and enjoy discovering the universe. And we do have one more net left this evening, and it is the Afterglow Movie Net. We will be back in about 5 minutes. I'll be looking for a net control, so if anybody dares to do it, this is an opportunity. So we'll be back in about 5 minutes to discuss On the Waterfront from 1959. We'll see you then. This is KE5ICX. I'm clear for now.
Tom, thank you so much for all you do, and thanks for being net control tonight. KF5JHA 73, everyone.
K5JDW from W5GUS. KF5JDW from W5GUS. John, are you still on frequency? Nothing heard. W5GUS clear.
To have anybody who'd like to be net control for the Afterglow Movie Net, it's easy peasy. Anybody want to give it a shot? All you have to do is ask the questions. What'd you think of the plot? What did you think of the acting and characters? And what did you think of the special effects? 3 questions. Easy peasy. Come on, somebody come to the front. be Spartacus tonight.
Okay, Tom, stop whining. I volunteer inside BB.
Oh, that's so good, because I was about to. Cat 5GRH.
Careful, Melissa. He might throw that hot potato back to you.
Oh, Melissa's welcome to take that hot potato and juggle it inside BB.
My radio's not working. Oh, I have to clear. Cat 5GRH. Standing by monitoring because my radio's not working.
Tom, she may have radiation sickness.
Oh, let's hope not. Let's hope not. Yes, she'll need one of those little pins. It's classic. Or one, maybe it's on the radio too. Who knows?
I should have watched that movie. Cat 5GRH.
It was quite a long movie. All right. Okay, we're coming up on 5 seconds, so I'll let you take over from here. I'll be listening until you tell me not to. KE5I6.
You mean I get to do it and Melissa's backing out?
I have the traffic net. I'll be back in a few minutes. I gotta go to the traffic net. Cat 5GRH. QSY.
You want me to do it, Tom?
Yeah, I think you're good to go. Go right ahead. I'm losing my voice anyway, so by all means. This is KE5I6.
This is Infab BB, accepting net control for the Afterglow net. Tonight we're going to talk about On the Beach, a 1959 Stanley Kramer film. That's right. This was a real movie. None of this made-for-TV B-series stuff. This is a real movie with real movie stars. Gregory Peck, Ava Gardner, Tony Perkins, Fred Astaire. And no, he doesn't get to dance. But he's a pretty interesting actor anyway. So, Tom, do you want to read one of your carefully prepared descriptions, either straightforward or not so straightforward? This is Infab BB.
Yeah, I can go ahead and give the real plot analysis if you'd like.
Go right ahead.
All right, thanks, Bill. And this film was interesting enough that I did some research on the thing later on so I could participate because there were some things about it that were quite fascinating that I did not know. But anyway, here we go. In 1964, now remember this movie was released in 1959. In 1964, World War III has devastated the northern hemisphere, killing all humans due to nuclear fallout. The only areas still habitable are in the far reaches of the southern hemisphere, but air currents are slowly carrying the fallout south. Australian survivors detect an incomprehensible Morse code signal coming from the west coast of the United States. The American nuclear submarine USS Sawfish under Royal Australian Navy Command is ordered to sail north and locate the source of the signal. The submarine is commanded by Captain Dwight Towers, who leaves behind a new friend, Maria Davidson. A scientific theory postulates that the radiation levels near the Arctic Ocean are lower than those in the mid-northern hemisphere, possibly indicating that radiation could disperse before reaching the southern hemisphere. Arriving at Point Barrow, Alaska, the submarine discovers that radiation levels are in fact intensifying. The Sawfish arrives in San Francisco Bay Area. The crew finds a city devoid of any signs of life. Ralph Swain, a crewman who had a family in San Francisco, deserts the submarine and swims ashore. Scientist Julian Osborne informs Captain Towers that the Swain's contact with the radioactive environment will quickly make it impossible for him to return without killing everyone on board. The next morning, through the periscope, Captain Towers observes Swan fishing in the bay. He apologizes for deserting and explaining that he preferred to die in his hometown. Towers understands, bids him farewell, and departs for San Diego. Your San Diego Communications Officer, Lieutenant Thunderstrom, goes ashore wearing radiation and oxygen gear to search out the source of the signal. It's just 1 hour and is alerted by the Sawfish horn blast every 15 minutes and must return immediately upon hearing the third horn blast. At the power station, it is still running on automatic control. He finds the telegraph and discovers a tilted Coca-Cola bottle hanging on it from its neck from an open window shade pull cord. Random ocean breezes bump the bottle against the live telegraph key, sending out random signals. Thunderstrom uses real Morse code to send a message describing the bleak situation. Before returning to the sawdust, Thunderstrom shuts down the power station's generators. The Sawfish and its crew return to Australia to enjoy what pleasures remain while reuniting with Maria. At her father's farm, Towers hears that all U.S. Navy personnel stationed at their base in Brisbane have died. Towers is promoted to Admiral of the remaining U.S. Navy personnel in Australia. Osborne wins the Australian Grand Prix, in which many racers with nothing left to lose die in various crashes. With the fishing season starting sooner than normal, Towers and Maria begin a fishing trip. At a country stream, drunken revelers surround them. From their resort room, they can hear more boozy fishermen singing a version of Waltzing Matilda. Towers and Maria share a romantic interlude while outside a gathering storm howls. The fishermen sing a beautiful a cappella rendition of the song's foreboding final verse. Returning to Melbourne, Towers learns one of his crew has developed radiation sickness. The deadly radiation has arrived. Osborne closes himself in a sealed garage with his championship racing car, electing to die from carbon monoxide poisoning as he revs the engines. Others line up to receive suicide pills issued by the Australian government. Towers wants to stay with Maria, but many of his remaining crew want to head for home to die in the U.S. He chooses his duty over his love of Maria and joins his crew as they attempt to make it back to the radioactive America. Maria watches the Sawfish leave Australia and submerge for a final voyage home. Within a few days, the last pockets of humanity are dead. The empty, wind-blown streets of Melbourne are punctuated by the rise of dramatic, strident music over a single powerful image of a previously seen Salvation Army street banner. There's still time, brother. And that's it. Back to you, Bill, KE5ICX. And check me in. I did see the movie, too.
Okay, Tom. This is N5BB. Wow. That's the whole plot. You know, that's just the outline for everything. You could take that summary and direct the whole movie. Thank you very much, Tom. Okay, let's look at RF check-ins. Who would like to check in for the Afterglow Net? Please give me your call sign, your name, and tell me whether you saw the movie. This is the Afterglow Net, N5BB Net Control. Go ahead.
This is Kilo India 5 Hotel, Melissa, Northeast Dallas. No, I didn't see the movie, but I'm just so lonely I want to be over here, so here I am. Cat 5GH out. Or not out, here.
Kilo 0 Foxtrot Echo Romeo, Chris in southeast Dallas, opposite Melissa, and I did see the movie. I watched this one.
November 5. Hotel Yankee Papa, Tom and family. We saw the movie and sang the song multiple times.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony and Dallas. I read the book but have not seen the movie.
Whiskey 5, Echo Bravo Bravo, David in Dallas. Yes, I saw the movie.
Melissa KI5GRH. She was a bad girl. She did not see the movie. Chris K0FER did see the movie. Tom and family and 5HYP did see the movie. And Tony NT5TM is going to tell us where everything, the way it should have been directed, because he read the book, but he did not see the movie. Okay, anybody else want to check into the Afterglow net on RF? This is in 5BB, Afterglow net control.
Whiskey 5, Echo Bravo Bravo, David in Dallas. Yes, I saw it.
No, I did see the movie.
Whiskey 5, Echo Bravo Bravo, David in Dallas. Yes, I saw it.
Kilo Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean in Fort Worth. Yes, I seen the movie.
Okay, let's pause there. There was a double, but I got both of you the first time, David. So I recognize W5EBB. David did see the movie. WB5OZL. Brenda did see the movie. And Sean, KB9SOK, did see the movie. Do we have any other check-ins for the Afterglow net? We're talking about the movie On the Beach, a very famous 1959 movie. This is in 5BB, looking for check-ins. Over. Okay, I'm not sure if Echolink's working good enough. Oh wow, it really is sensitive. It's cranking into the red. Maybe that's the reason it's messing up, Tom. Too much audio gain. The only person I see left over there, except for Tom and me, is Jay, KG5BZW. Jay, do you want to participate in this net tonight? I think Jay has left us. So one last chance. Does anybody else want to check in for the Afterglow net? We're talking about On the Beach, the famous 1959 apocalyptic movie. This is in 5BB. Any more check-ins?
This is KE5AXY, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Okay, the KE5 station, please give me the rest of your call phonetically and give me your name and location. Tell me if you saw the movie.
Certainly, Kilo Echo 5, Alpha X-Ray Yankee in North Dallas.
Okay, what's your name and did you see the movie?
My name is Roy. I saw the movie 20 years ago.
Very good, Roy. Welcome. KE5AXY. This is in 5BB and the Afterglow net. Glad to have you. Okay, does anybody else want to check into the Afterglow net before we start? This is in 5BB, net control. Okay, I'm going to take a weird order. I'm going to start in the middle. Tony, NT5TM, you read the book, but you didn't see the movie. What did you think about the book, Tony? We're talking about the plot right now. What did you think about the plot? And we're assuming I think there's some differences, but I think most of the movie is made directly from the book, except in the movie, by the way, they do not know how the war started. So they don't really discuss that. Nobody really knows. But everything else, I think, is pretty similar, Tony. What do you say about the plot, Tony? This is N5BB.
Whew, well, that was a surprise. I don't get anyone to react to. Tom's summary did make the movie sound very faithful to the book. You know, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Often we have to leave things out of movies, Tom Bombadil, that were really just clutter in the book. So often there are good reasons to make the movie a little different. But it sure sounded like that was pretty faithful. The book was resolutely and extremely, painfully just downbeat and depressing. Mr. Neville Shute, or Neville Shute Norway, was a very talented engineer. He was the successful manager of a giant airship project, chief engineer of the R-100, which completed a successful transatlantic crossing before its competitor, the R-101, crashed into the fields of France. But the R-100 was grounded due to fears over airship technology. But unfortunately, expertise in one area, crafting very careful stress calculations of airship elements, airship frame elements, does not mean that he's an expert on radiation or fallout. And even just given what I knew at the time about how radiation raises the background levels of birth defects and mutations and cancers, but is really so as intense as to be just sterilizing, I found the book kind of unbearable. The government people really did in the book, they line up and they get their suicide kits from the government, and they just methodically, I noticed the neighbors have started vomiting. I guess it's time to kill the dog and turn off the gas at the valve, and you'll take your pill and I'll take mine, and we'll go to bed and hold hands and we'll all die. The end. That just isn't how elevated levels of background radiation work. But I guess the book was meant to be apocalyptic and is a great warning, despite its many errors about not only radiation, but about even how submarines operate. It talked about the Australian government having to distill the special nuclear fuel burned in the engine of that U.S. submarine, because obviously nuclear fuel is just a kind of diesel oil. So I found the plot of the book sad and emotionally compelling, but also frustratingly inaccurate, and judging by Tom's summary, the movie was very faithful to the book, and probably just as sad and moving, but scientifically implausible. NT5TM.
Okay, thank you, Tony. They said nothing about airships, to my knowledge, in the movie, unless they slipped it in and I missed it. But the scientist was named Julian Osborne, and he did take the radiation measurements and everything. By the way, he's played by Fred Astaire pretty well, actually. Okay, Tony, well, we appreciate your comments about the plot. Next, I'm going to go to David, W5EBB. David, what did you think about the plot? And by the way, after David, I'm going to go to Brenda. So what did you think about the plot, David? N5BB.
Well, thanks, Bill. Well, this movie placed dead last in the 1959 People's Choice Awards for Feel-Good Movie of the Year. It's ironic how atomic bombs that were lauded as saving lives by ending World War II early went quickly from being venerated to being vilified as a global weapon of destruction and terror. What was supposed to be a two-shot Hiroshima, Nagasaki cure turned out to be a lifelong treatment to a continuous threat of global thermonuclear war. Now, it's important to be able to rally people behind a common purpose or a common enemy, whether it's real, constructed, or imagined. It's the perception of a common purpose or threat that matters, and it can be used to either unite or divide. And I think that's what this movie is trying to do. It's trying to broadly encourage people in the early 60s to think about a common goal of nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. And when policymakers start signing disarmament treaties, the public would approve of the seemingly logical outcome of their grassroots rallies and letters to Congress. Now, man has certainly demonstrated an ability to kill hundreds of thousands of people on his own through wars and other means. But this notion that man is able to directly control his ultimate destiny, the survival or extinction of his species, I don't subscribe to. I think that's God's domain, not man's. And it's extreme hubris, if not utter folly, to think that man of his own volition, using tools made of his own hands, would be able to expunge himself from the face of the earth. Now, man may directly or indirectly influence his destiny, collectively or individually, following or refusing to follow certain laws. In the latter case, God might say, I've tried to teach you, I've tried to correct you, but time and time again, you have refused to obey. Noah understood this. Now, this movie is frustrating to watch, partly, I think, because it is factually incorrect in some areas, as Tony mentioned, and also because the actors didn't seem to be portraying the characters authentically, given the situation. But then again, maybe it's impossible to know how to act in an end-of-days scenario. So we see conflicted attitudes of determined resignation, hopeful fatalism, and other emotional oxymorons. You could just get drunk and have a sing-along every night, adopting the attitude of, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. But I think a more appropriate behavior would be penitence, mourning, and reflection, but to each his own. Now, a few of the technical difficulties: just because the Australians have uranium doesn't mean that it's the kind of fuel that can be used to refuel a nuclear submarine reactor. And I doubt they had the facility to actually perform the refueling, which is much more involved than just throwing in a few uranium pellets to top off the tank. Oh, and you don't need a hydroelectric plant, obviously, to power a transmitter for a radio sending Morse code. One car battery would do just fine. W5EBB.
Well, thank you, David. Now let's go to Brenda, WB5OZL. Brenda, what did you think about the plot? This is in 5EB.
This is WB5OZL. A lot of it was just ridiculous and just unrealistic. The way people acted, and so much drinking. My gosh, it was just horrible. And I just thought it was kind of a simple-minded approach to human behavior, to go, well, we're all gonna die. Okay, I'll just lie here. I just think people are more complex than that. And I was a little curious as to why somebody didn't try and do something like, let's go underground, let's dig some holes. Maybe Antarctica is free of radiation, or maybe we just go south in Australia. We'll get far enough away from it, or go live in some lead houses or something, or go to the basement, put dirt on the floor to shield you. They just were they just accepted their fate. And I guess nobody had a bomb shelter then. I remember in 1959, there were a lot of people who were building them for that reason, and you would think that some of them would have done so and lived through it. Yeah, it's depressing. The critics loved it. I thought they would have hated it, but they didn't. They really liked it. But there was so much of the movement at the time of this cautionary tale. You children better watch out, or you're going to destroy yourselves with this dangerous bomb, and you don't have the the maturity to avoid killing everybody on Earth. And, well, it's been 75 years, and we haven't done that yet. So, and the only 2 times it was used as a weapon was, you know, a very measured and considered use of it to end a horrible war. It, everybody thinks it's like Dr. Strangelove. Everybody's got their finger is trigger happy and ready to put the bomb, to drop the bomb in a second. And I was that way. I lived in horrible fear that the bomb was going to drop tonight, and wanted my parents to build a bomb shelter. So it was just so much of the culture at the time that we were all just scared to death of it. And maybe that's good that everybody understood. We better be scared, because if we use it, it's going to be a really bad thing for all of us. I thought a lot of the relationships in this were just, you know, it really strained the credibility. Ava Gardner was annoying as she could be. Gregory Peck was fine. He's never done anything bad. But and a lot of these other people were just, you know, it's like, you know, shut up so we can move on. All right, I'll turn it over. WB50ZL.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. Next, we go to Sean, KB9SOK. Sean, what did you think about the plot of On the Beach? This is N5BB Afterglow.net.
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. Yeah, I think it's actually been pretty well said. This movie was a cautionary tale with bad science, but still, of course, obviously there was a lot of movies made, and a lot of them we've watched here on the net about cautionary tales in that time frame, because as everybody said, it was very much on everybody's mind. Maybe what made this movie a little bit more unique was the fact that it was kind of like afterwards, where several of the movies we watched, it was more of, you know, preventing it. And this movie focused on what would happen had most of the world already been wiped out for the remaining people. And really the focus was how did each person want to go out and I guess basically end it. But yes, it was a very depressing movie. And they very, 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 very drawled it out. It was way longer than it needed to be. And they very much dwelled on, you know, the same thing over and over. And it got to the point to where it was getting very annoying, especially by the end of the movie. And there was one point there where it was starting to pick up the pace a little bit, at least when the submarine was out investigating. But yeah, the rest of it was just pretty depressing. And yes, I agree with the comments that I don't think everybody would just give up. Yeah, I think, yeah, there would have been bomb shelters. There would have been people that would have just held out, you know, as long as they could. It seems to be our past has shown that, you know, the human race tries to usually hang on as long as they can. They don't give up that easy. That's why we have all these wars and people trying to break free from, you know, various situations. I just don't think people would have gave up so easily. So I found that pretty unbelievable. Yeah, the science was pretty bad. The refueling of the sub was was almost hilarious. And the fact that it needed to be refueled every apparently couple days. I thought the whole point of nuclear power was that it could be out for months, years, and not have to have the rods replaced. But so yeah, that part for a movie that was so well taken by the critics, I'm surprised, because it's just all in all, just really did enjoy this movie, even though I had top-ranked people in it. And the characters they were over the top, and then the relationships and stuff just, yeah, it was just really strange. It had a very weird vibe to it. It's not a whole lot unique to bring to this conversation, but just to kind of echo what others have said. Back to net control. This is KB9SOK.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Roy, KE5AXY. You said it's been a while since you've seen the movie. Do you have any comments about the plot? This is N5BB.
Well, it's been so long since I've seen it, I barely remember the plot other than the fact that the world had been caught up in a nuclear disaster. but just generally speaking, I just ran it on YouTube here and found that apparently they made a version in the year 2000, which may have been an Australian version of it. But yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it. Just a couple of things, you know, back then they weren't really into method acting. They all just kind of hit their mark and said their lines. So, you know, if they come across as being flat, that was the style back then. But yeah, I'm gonna watch it again here after a while. That's what you guys do. You get me to watch movies I haven't watched in a long time. KE5AXY.
Okay, thanks, Roy. This is the Afterglow Net. We're talking about the movie On the Beach in 1959. Pretty much science fiction movie. Next, let's go back up closer to the top. Tom, N5HYP. What did you and your family think about the plot? And by the way, after Tom, we're going to have K0FER. So Tom, N5HYP, what do you say about the plot? This is N5BB.
N5BB and the net, this is N5HYP. First of all, Tony's description of the plot of the book had, you know, all the salient points. It just when Hollywood got to it, they took the salient points and, yeah, you got some big name, you know, big name actors and actresses, Ava Gardner, what's his name, you know, as leads. You had to contrive romance or unrequited romance into it. And that's what drug the movie out and slowed it down and made it really, really frustrating. Greg Peck, I'm sorry. I just lost my brain for a moment. So I think that was one real just frustration for me. And I understood why they did it. It's box office. You know, you do the trailers, and they're going to show Peck and Gardner with some conversation where it looks like they're you know, maybe emphasizing the points where the captain decides he wasn't gonna. That he really wasn't that interested in her originally and such like that. So, yeah, the plot, I think, I understand also was interesting. I understand why critics liked it. It was first movies, I think, probably to really effectively speak against nuclear war or against the possibility that it was like a winnable thing. I know Dr. Strangelove really you know, brought that out, or movies like Failsafe, same thing, but those were a little later on. And I don't know if I'm going to stick around for all three rounds. Yeah, the characterization was, you know, typical 50s Hollywood movies. I hated they were based in Australia, but we didn't hear a single authentic Australian accent. And it almost got to be humorous over as to how many versions of Waltzing Matilda they could come up with throughout the movie, as if that's the only song that Australians know. Oh, and by the way, the other point from a ham radio standpoint, you know, they heard this Morse code, which was gibberish, but nowhere did anybody try to send back some Morse code to see if it would be responded to. So that we thought was pretty odd. That's all I got for now. This is N5HYP. I might be around later on, might not. We'll see. This is N5HYP, back to net.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, next we have K0FER Chris, And by the way, Melissa, get ready. You're next. So, Chris, Key 0 FER, what did you think about the plot? This is in 5BB, Afterglow.net.
So I thought the plot reminded me a lot of a much newer movie that I watched called Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. And I was just kind of struck, like, man, this is bleak. Rather than the kind of sort of optimism that that newer film has. Gregory Peck, I mean, he does a good job. It's not To Kill a Mockingbird, but whatever. Everybody else was either overacting, underacting, or poorly acting. And except for those Statler and Waldorf characters that were complaining about the port, I found them absolutely delightful. The plot, though, what did I say about that? Hold on, reset. The plot, I was born in the 80s. I didn't grow up with the Red Scare or the bombs. I knew Gorbachev, sort of, and Perestroika and Glasnost. I don't that whole fear of mutually assured destruction is not really part of my zeitgeist. So didn't really resonate with me in that sense. And also, kind of seeing how it turned out, kind of worked, didn't it? At least it ran out the clock on the Soviet economic collapse. So ultimately I found the plot bleak, kind of forced at times, and yeah, there were some points in it that I thought were absolutely contrived about the love story, trying to force human interest stuff into shoehorn it into the plot. Only thing I really did like, actually, was the motivic use of Waltzing Matilda throughout the entire score. I thought it was used very creatively at times. But we'll get to that. Back to Nat.
Okay, Chris, you want to identify?
Yes, I'm so sorry. K0FER. Back to Nat.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Now, Melissa, it's your turn. You did not see the movie, but do you have any comments? And by the way, Tom, K5ICX, you're next. So, Melissa, what did you think about the plot after hearing everybody else? Do you have any comments about the movie in general in 5BB?
Well, actually, I may have read that book when I was in high school, possibly. I forgot the other book. Somebody else just mentioned another book that was kind of similar to that thinking. I have just gone blank on the name of it. I'm trying to write I'm trying to write something else, a report, so I was half listening. But I grew up in I was born in 1961, so I grew up when all of that thinking was still around, being fearful of the bomb, all that, going to bomb shelters, and anyway, it was kind of an interesting thing to go see an empty bomb shelter, but it had food and stuff in it. I can't speak intelligently on this book, or maybe, however, because I didn't see it recently. Anyway, but I love listening to y'all. So, fun. K5GRH.
Thank you, Melissa. Now, Tom, it's your turn, KE5ICX. What did you think about the plot? This is in 5BB, Afterglow.net.
Hey, thank you, Bill, and thanks for making me last, because usually that's the benefit of being net control, and I'm second to last, I guess, in regards to you can hear everybody else's comments and then comment on the comments. But I'm going to let you do a lot of that since you have that opportunity. Let me say this about the film. First off, some of the things that drove me nuts about the film. The story that I read to you, most of this happens after 1 hour into the film. 1 hour into the film. They didn't actually go out in the submarine until an hour and 5 minutes into this 2 hour and 15-minute movie. So we had all of this stuff going on, setting up the characterization and things like that, and they went from party to party to party to party. Now I go back and I look at the cast, and we've got a cast of millions. Of course, our major characters, there's about 7 major characters in the film, 8 major characters. Each time we had to go to each character, the couples, and discuss what's going to happen and how and all of that. That definitely slowed the film down considerably. I remember the story, but when I saw it as a kid, and the thing that I remember, of course, was the Coke bottle. So that was ruined for me immediately because I recognized that plot contrivance from the movie I watched zillions of years ago. So there you go. So I didn't even have that mystery to take with me on the trip. Now, you got to remember, we're viewing this through 2021, and we're not looking at it when the film came out in 1959. A lot of people were alive and very much aware of 1945 and what had happened with the atomic bombs on Japan. And I think probably, and the idea that, you know, what can you do after an atomic bomb drops is there's not a lot. There's not a lot you can do. The radiation is going to get to you eventually, and people are killed instantaneously, but then people died horrible deaths and lingered for a long period of time. So I was trying to figure out and understand, you know, what would your characters do? What would people do in general? Well, if you feel it's hopelessness, then you're going to kind of live through it, and you're going to be in denial. What is it? Anger, bargaining, denial, acceptance, and forgiveness. I think that's what it is. The Ross thing. You're going to go through those different stages, and that's what these people did. They went through these different stages to try and understand it. Some felt remorse. I know we're getting to characterization, but everybody as a group fed off of each other, and that was part of the plot. Lots of smoking, lots of drinking. Yeah, what else are you going to do? You're waiting for death. The rest of the world is in shambles, and the cloud is headed your way. You will soon be in shambles, too. What do you do? Well, you could go and build, a fallout shelter, but how many hundreds of years will that last with, 2 weeks of food? So I didn't see that as much of a problem as maybe others did. The other thing too I thought was kind of interesting, and I didn't understand the waltzing Matilda thing, but if you go back and you look and you can Google all this stuff, the waltzing Matilda is sort of like the song of the national anthem of Australia, and having to do with a hobo that goes walking along the road. He stops at a he's called a swagman. There's a different name for everything. A jumbuck, which is a sheep, a squatter, who is a landowner, and troopers who are mounted policemen. Essentially what happens is this guy who's a hobo stops at the side of a river. He's hungry. He sees a sheep that comes by to drink water. And he kills the sheep, puts it in his sack for food later on. He's found later on to be one of the squatters or landowner comes and says, I'm going to have you arrested. 3 police come to see him. He decides instead that he's going to jump in the water and drown himself rather than be taken to jail because he loves his freedom. And I think that's sort of part of the theme here to a certain extent in an Australian mindset. And that is that people, you've led a good life. I don't want it to change. And I'm going to accept what's going to happen, that death is inevitable. But there's freedom in death as well. And I think that may be part of the story that they're trying to tell in all the iterations of Waltzing Matilda. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I kind of get that feel because it was so pushed so extremely in the film. So, and I agree with, I think it was Tom? I forget, I didn't write my notes properly today. I was just kind of listening, but saying there weren't any Australian accents. That's true. That happens a lot in film, so you don't get it. Even though it was filmed in Australia, you'd think at least they would get voice coaches or something to help you, or dialect coaches, but that didn't happen. The more I think about the film, the more I find it interesting. I still think it's way too damn long. 2 hours and 15 minutes for a story that could have been told in about 45 minutes, even with some of the drama. Drop the number of characters would have been a big help. But this is what happens when you have so many people in the film, and they all demand camera time or air time. It just bogs it down quite a bit. But with that being said, there is some interesting characterizations that I'll mention the next time around. That's it for me on this round, KE5ICX.
Well, thank you, Tom. This is N5BB, Net Control for the Afterglow Net. Before I make my comments, let me just see, does anybody else want to check in to this net? This is N5BB, looking for check-ins. Okay, we're discussing the 1959 film On the Beach, black and white movie. So let's see, my comments. I had never seen the film. I might have seen little short segments of it, but I'm sure I'd never seen this whole film. I'd heard of it, but when it came out, I mean, I turned 6 years old in 1959, the year this movie was released. So I was too young to see it on the first release. I did see some of the other crazy movies like Failsafe in the early to mid-'60s when they came out on first release. But I did not see this movie. So this is the first time I'd actually seen the movie. Although I'd heard about it for many years since it's a rather famous movie. This is N5BB. But just some comments about the thoughts about nuclear war. People were very worried about nuclear war back in the late 50s, well, all through the 50s into the 60s. And it was a big deal, really big deal. Both the U.S. and the Soviet Union were going crazy, building bigger bombs, both plutonium and hydrogen bombs, and various delivery vehicles. That's what got the space race started, was, intercontinental ballistic missiles. This is N5BB. And submarines were a big part of this. Although this movie did not, to my memory, they did not discuss any nuclear weapons in the submarine. But in reality, by the time you got into the 60s, you had the Trident program, which was 3 ways to deliver nuclear weapons. Aircraft, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and nuclear submarines that could stay under the water for long periods of time, and you may not know where they are. And so if everything on ground is blown up, you could still execute some counter strikes via these hidden nuclear submarines with all the Trident missiles in them. And that program is still active. In fact, a few years ago at work, I was helping some people at Lockheed Martin in Cape Canaveral, Florida, that were working on some test things for the next generation of Trident missiles. This is N5BB. I've told this story before, but I'll say it very quickly. A few years after this movie, maybe 8 years or so after this movie came out, my brother, for a elementary school project, did a poster board. You know, I grew up in Austin, my brother and I, and it showed Bergstrom Air Force Base, which was a strategic air command base with nuclear weapons out there on the ready. There was a Nike anti-missile base there with missiles on it. And we were a prime, destination for missiles back in the early 60s with, Vice President, then President Johnson at his ranch out west of Austin. And we had the state capitol and the University of Texas. So Austin Bergstrom Air Force Base was one of the prime targets. And my brother's big poster showed the Air Force Base with circles around it. It showed our elementary school. And it showed that we would not be in the, all wood buildings burst into flames and are blown down. But we would be in the area where, unless your building was very strong, it would be damaged by the shock wave from the nuclear weapon, because we were only about 7 miles away from the SAC base. Anyway, it was a pretty scary thing. I saw a neighbor of an aunt of mine had a nuclear shelter, fallout shelter in her backyard. This is N5BB. The Austin American Statesman newspaper issued a poster, which we had taped to one of our doors. Big poster, and it talked about what to do and if there's a nuclear attack, where to get water. Our church in the basement was a fallout shelter, and it had Geiger counters and rations in it. It was pretty scary back then. Anyway, so that's when this movie was made, where all this stuff was starting up. I kind of liked the movie, as opposed to everybody else that seemed to have seen it tonight. N5BB. I'm going to read something from a website here talking about this movie. The characters in On the Beach are almost unique in modern fiction in that they behave in exactly the way we expect them to behave. Julian Smith claims that On the Beach has more mood than plot. If this is true, then the not terribly dynamic character's function in this very mannered novel is to show the shadings and moods of the quite orderly way the world ends. And I agree with that. I think it's a study in, the people's characters and their moods. And the plot is kind of secondary, although obviously it's apocalyptic. I thought the really interesting scene was the bar scene. So the first bar scene, when he goes into the room and he kind of slams the door, there's a large painting on the wall, and it cocks over at an angle, and the staff there straighten it. Later on in the movie, the same thing happens. The door slams and the painting gets cocked. So it kind of shows that they're kind of out of kilter in that room. The old guys caring about their libations, all their liquor, more than they cared about what was going on in the world around them. And it was never going to change. Just like a lot of things in the world were going to change. Anyway, I've talked way too long. Next, let's go and talk about the characters. Let's go to the top. Let's go to Tony, NT5TM. You still here, Tony? Characterization, N5BB.
Hey, Bill, I'm still here, and at least in the book, I found the characters to be wooden, boring, formulaic. They were Arthur C. Clarke might have showed up and written this novel because, well, if he'd only made it more realistic, because they just weren't interesting to me. By the time I read this book, I had already seen The Day After. I had already read practical books about the effects of nuclear war, and I didn't think any of that made me feel good in any way, but I just, as a young person, the characters just didn't touch me at all. Unfortunately, that's just the way it was. And of course, no net where I give comments would be complete without my recommending a couple of alternative choices. So I will just briefly mention that if you want to see a downbeat movie about the effects of nuclear war, it's the only made-for-TV movie I ever really praise, and we've even had it as an Afterglow movie. The Day After is your choice. And if you just want to see an anti-war movie with brilliant characters, Das Boot. Das Boot is Aaron and my favorite anti-war movie. We both care about that movie a great deal. But other than telling you to watch those other movies, that's really all I can say. I'll probably check out here. Those would be my first choices, because this book, for me, the characters just fell flat. And that's the ultimate test of a book, because, I mean, I'm a human, I'm selfish, I want a story where the humans engage me, and the humans in the book, at least, did not. November Tango 5, Tango Mike.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Let's go to David, W5EBB. David, what did you think about the characterization? This is N5BB.
Well, thanks, Bill. Anthony Perkins, I thought, delivered a very bland performance. His Australian accent was like a magic show. Here one moment, disappearing the next. His stoic, soulless mannerisms would be appropriate for the movie he played in the following year, Psycho. And why is Ava Gardner hitting on Gregory Peck? Wildly inappropriate, given that he's still in mourning and even in denial that he's lost his wife and children back home. This romance was apparently the director's hand to embellish the story. It was not in the book. Gregory Peck didn't agree with this either, but like in real life, he's the actor and he does what his director tells him to do. Fred Astaire, who was perhaps best known for his portrayal of Starbuck's father in the ill-begotten 1980 Season 2 of Battlestar Galactica. Did anybody see that? I saw it. Had the quintessential quote of the movie, and it was more like a soliloquy. Who would ever have believed that human beings were stupid enough to blow themselves off the face of the earth? The war started when people accepted the idiotic principle that peace could be maintained by arranging to defend themselves with weapons they couldn't possibly use without committing suicide. Well, that pretty much is telling it like it is. Stupid and idiotic. And the ridiculousness of it all was well dramatized in the 1964 Dr. Strangelove, a.k.a. How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. And it's true, you don't see any fallout shelter signs anymore, anywhere. They've been taken down. And honestly, it makes you wonder, was this ever really a threat? Or was this mostly a ruse to incite fear and dread in the population for some other purpose? As far as I know, the threat of global thermonuclear war still hasn't gone away. It's just not as popular as it used to be. W5EBB.
Well, there's a lot of people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki that would say it was a big threat. Anyway, Brenda, WB50ZL, what did you think about the characterization? This is N5BB.
This is WB50ZL. Well, I agree. This woman had no business hitting on this guy. She was just desperate. It's almost a stereotype, these desperate women that are just like spiders out to catch a man. And, yeah, just, it's so undignified. But she was desperate, and she had her sights on him. An attractive woman, she could have looked somewhere else, but she didn't. And I was a little bit disappointed that he fell for her. Like, what about his wife? What's up with that? They didn't seem to have anything in common other than that they were both attractive, and they liked to drink. Other than that, and she drank way too much. Everybody drank too much. What's up with that? I didn't understand that theme in this movie. If everyone was just an alcoholic. Other characters. Fred Astaire was by far one of the best characters in the movie. And a lot of the others are just real forgetful. They didn't do much. They weren't very interesting. They weren't real basic to the plot. And so, pretty forgettable. I guess that's all I have to say. This is WB50ZL.
Thanks, Brenda. Now it's time for Sean, KB9SOK. Sean, what did you think about the characters? This is N5BB. And Roy, you're going to be next.
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. I agree with the comments. Our main characters, I didn't get either why he fell for her so quickly. He just found out, his wife and kids were dead. I don't know that a person would that quickly be ready to fall in love with another person. Being that these are two really technically main characters, that whole relationship was disappointing. Didn't make sense. I kind of sort of get what they were going for, but it just, the characters were not right. And it's interesting to hear that he didn't agree with the story as well. So it's never a good sign. The most interesting character probably was the scientist. He was the only one that kind of, he was in the race because it was on his bucket list, something he always dreamed of doing, and he did it. And I would think that if you knew your time was limited, you'd spend time with family, friends, and maybe do the things that you always wanted to do. And so he was maybe the most realistic character in the whole thing. I get it. Some people would make those decisions to just give up. But they did have 5 months. They could have come up with something, and I think some would have. So, the whole thing was just depressing. The characters were depressing, just very flat. Pretty much they all, for the most part, acted the same. Just really disappointed in it. And I don't get there at the very end. And I was a little disappointed that she didn't go with him. I realized her father was there in Australia, but if they had really fallen in love, wouldn't she gone with him? It ain't like they had to worry about breaking any rules. And they could have spent the last couple months, as they traveled back to America. So, the whole thing just kind of fell flat. I did stay with the movie, I guess, as somebody said about that, even though it was definitely long, and I was losing interest fast. The song was almost a character. It was definitely kind of the part of the plot. I agree that they definitely were trying to work that in and make a point with it. But by the end, to be honest, I was starting to get annoyed with it because I just kept hearing it over and over and over. This one just kind of fell flat for me overall. Back to net. This is KB9SOK.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Next is going to be Roy. And after Roy, we're going to do Tom and family, if Tom's still there. So Roy, K5AXY, what did you think about the characterization? This is N5BB after GLONET. Roy, are you still there? I think Roy is left. Tom, N5HYP, if you're still there, Tom, would you think about the characterization? This is N5BB. I think Tom is left. Chris, K0FER. If you're still there, what did you think about their characterization? This is N5BB.
Pretty much everything's been said about the characterization. I thought it was pretty flat. I do have a little bit more grace for people that are making bad decisions, both romantically and substance abuse. And yeah, because I don't know about y'all, but I've known a lot of people that have made some really, really bad decisions in their life. And I guess it's not out of the realm of imagination that people facing the impending doom of the human race would make similarly bad decisions. As I said earlier, everybody's overacting, except for Gregory Peck. I thought he was the best of the bunch. Maybe Fred Astaire. But I never really connected with any of them. I kept wondering, it's like, man, you have a sub that can stay underwater for 2 years. Why don't you get in that and just try to restart the population? So I was waiting for that dawning bit of realization to hit one of them, maybe the scientist. But alas, that did not happen. K0FER, back to net.
Okay, Chris. Melissa, are you still there? You got any comments about the characterization? This is N5BB. Afterglow net.
Hey, Bill. Yeah, I'm still here. I halfway listen to y'all, but you know, I really appreciate actually listening to your hearts. And just I hear your personalities and your true, oh man, I feel like I really get to know you well on this net. You're all super neat people, caring, you think deeply about so many things. It's just impressive to hear you analyze some of these movies and books, even the ones that are just really bad. But you come up with, I don't know, I hear you. Wow, I am talking way too much here. Anyway, I feel like I get to know you better listening. I don't have anything intelligent. Well, I can't even speak. So, back to you, Bill. Cat 5GRH.
Well, Melissa, didn't you know? On this net, we're all acting. We're actors. We're playing our parts on the net. Okay, next, Tom, KE5ICX. What do you think about the characterization, Tom? Nobody else likes him. This is N5BB. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Bill. Well, more is not always better. Okay, I actually, while I was cribbing on the novel version of this, and realized that the submarine had a lot more to do. They went to different places. They went throughout Australia along the coasts to find out before they make the big Pacific jaunt to America to find out what was going on. So, and then they get there and they go to Seattle and they go to San Francisco and they go to, I don't know if they went to San Diego or not, but in any case, there's plenty of things going on, people going places and doing things. In this movie, there was a lot of characterization. There's a lot of dialogue going on with a lot of additional people, which I think is what kind of just slowed it down and made it less convincing. That's not to say that the characters themselves couldn't have been more interesting or what they had. I mean, you're looking at the captain and he's denying the death of his family. He knows most certainly they're dead. And that weighs heavily on him when this other gal comes into his life. He's decided that he's going to remain loyal to his wife and children, even though they probably aren't there. I mean, that's a sad story. It's a difficult story to say maybe on screen when those people never appear in the movie at all. It's just they're talked about. You look at the family man. What was it? The Anthony Perkins character and the wife, the fragile wife, and all that, and trying to convince her that as a naval lieutenant, they're going to have another child. But there's not going to have another child, and how sad that is. That alone. I mean, any of these as single plots for a story with two characters would be expanded, and you would spend your time with and feel something for these characters. But what ends up happening is you go from pair after pair or groups of people and back and forth in such a way that you become weary. Everybody's miserable. It's like a Hallmark movie where everybody's got a terminal disease. I mean, it's very depressing. And it's backed up again by also, the fact that everybody's going to die at the very end. I mean, it's like an opera. Everybody dies at the end. Yay. How are you supposed to feel after that? I don't know. Tired, I guess. Now, I can't remember his name, but I do remember Fred Astaire, who played the scientist, the egghead, as they say, in the thing. He was great. I really enjoyed him. And yes, I did see that Battlestar Galactica episode. He was pretty good in that, too. No dancing, though. So, he was a good actor. He played kind of the same character, by the way. Oh, I really enjoyed him. I think he was kind of a breath of fresh air. He was the guy that pretty much laid it on the line as to what happened and why. He's the character that explains what everybody should have been thinking and weren't. I thought that was, demonstrating irony in the fact that I pushed the button and what did you expect? Something different to happen? That's what it became, and the hubris that went along with it. Sure, just press the button. You can unpress the button later, which of course you cannot. So his characterization I thought was quite good, and the fact that he died along, in Death Race 1959, which is essentially what was happening. All of these people were just saying, I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory. That makes sense too, to a certain extent. Why not, if that's all you got left? And then finally, I didn't mention this on the previous round, but because it's still integral to the plot. When 90% of the film is just dialogue and no action at all, then that's what you have. You've got the characters and their actions and actions. I think when people are confronted with their own mortality, which we all are at some point in our lives, that you have to kind of look at it and say, well, what do you do? What can you do? And in a lot of cases, there's not a lot you can do. You have to look back rather than forward. And that happens at old age. It happens with terminal diseases. It happens with all sorts of things. And I think we all have a tendency to see this either personally ourselves or through others who have lived through this, family members, older members of family. And they don't stop. Some do, but a lot of them do not. They continue on. They behave in ways that are maybe pensive, more understanding. Other times they react passionately. They see it as a challenge. And I think we saw some of that in these characterizations and the people and what they did. Sure, there's excessive drinking. Did you expect them not to if they knew they were going to die? And by the way, in the story, I think it's also mentioned in the movie, but it's in the synopses here, is that the radiation is going to head as far south as, the southern part of New Zealand, which would mean it would take out all of Australia along the way. So there was no way that they were going to survive. It would have taken over the entire planet. Yes, you could have put people in a submarine and gone someplace and maybe survived, and that may have been a more satisfying ending. but I don't know if it was realistic in that sense. So I don't see people's behavior as out of line. I think it's the sheer mass of all of this, the fact there are so many people having a miserable life that probably wore us all down to a point where it was cognitive dissonance. The one thing I will say is that each time there was an end to one of the storylines, I thought, oh, that's the end of the movie. No, we've got other people we've got to kill off. So that got wearisome after a while. I think that was one of the biggest problems with the movie as it was portrayed. That's it from me, Bill, on characterization. Back to you, KE5ICX.
Thanks, Tom. This is N5BB. We're getting near the end, so I'm of this net as well as this apocalyptic movie, so I'll try to keep it short. This is N5BB. For people that are listening, we're talking about the 1959 film On the Beach. And I actually kind of like the characters more than most of the rest of you evidently did. I read that comment earlier from a website I found. I agree that this is mainly a mood movie. And doesn't have a lot of physical action. If you're looking for an action movie, this is not it. And it's not designed to be a technical details movie. They didn't work on that, and they were kind of poor on it. I agree. But they attempted to show what a real submarine was like. And I've never been on a nuclear submarine, but I don't have any reason to disbelieve all the procedures they were following. And it kind of looked like the military chain of command and how they worked together looked reasonable to me. And I really thought that the way the characters interacted with each other was very reasonable. As that quote I said earlier, somebody pointed out they thought that the characters acted like you expected them to be. So, for instance, Donna Anderson, that was Mary, she was the actress playing Mary Holmes. She was Tony Perkins' wife. I personally thought she did a pretty good job. She had a young baby, and she did not understand what she was supposed to be doing. You know, how does she deal with this? How does she handle it? And then near the end, she got very incommunicative, and that may have been some radiation sickness. But she was kind of cold for a while, although at the end they kind of made up. But Tony Perkins' character, and I don't know if this was Perkins acting that way or whether he's directed that way or whether the screenplay was written this way. This is N5BB. But it was written like he was kind of a cold, methodical, he was the lieutenant, he was doing his job, he was trying to plan ahead with suicide pills for his family. So he was thinking about this as trying to alleviate the pain. And I know he came across as being a slow plotting character, but I think maybe that was on purpose. It bothered me a little bit, but not as much as the rest of you, I guess. I kind of understood Ava Gardner's character, Maura Davidson. This is N5BB. By the way, the drinking in this movie was not unusual for a movie from the 50s or early 60s. You look at the made-for-TV things, the shows like Perry Mason or Alfred Hitchcock, there's a well-stocked liquor cabinet in every single, house in those movies. drinking is a really big deal, just like smoking was. And that's just the way it was. So down here in the Bible Belt, it may not appear that way as much to us in Texas, but in the movies back then in some other parts of the country, that was what it was like. You know, you go into the companies and to the boardrooms and things, and there was the liquor cabinet back in the back of the boardroom in 5BB. Anyway, nobody talked about Lieutenant Hosgood, played by Lola Brooks. She was the quiet assistant to the military guy in Australia. And I thought that was kind of an interesting scene at the end. She didn't have anybody to go back to. I don't know. I think this movie did get me thinking about things. And I think probably back in 1959 it got about people thinking about it a lot more. It was set 5 years in the future, in January of 1964. This is in 5BB. So obviously it was made to get people thinking about what might happen in the near future. And this could have happened. Anyway, that's all my comments. Does anybody else have any, do we have any late check-ins? We're talking about On the Beach, a 1959 movie. Does anybody have any additional comments, any other check-ins, anything else before we close the net? I don't think there are any special effects, but does anybody else have any comments about the making of this movie? Music, submarines, anything at all? This is in 5BB. Looking for call signs.
Kilo Zero Foxtrot Echo Romeo. I have some comments about the music.
W5EBB, a comment.
We got Chris and Davis. I'm making the list. Does anybody else have any final comments? Give your call sign only. Let's go with Chris, K0FER. Music? Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you very much. So this score was nominated for an Academy Award. The composer, Ernest Gold, didn't win that year, but he won later for, I think, Exodus in 1960. But what I really liked is how he played with the Waltzing Matilda theme throughout the song, like a motive, sort of like what, I mean, you see it in opera all the time, taking a motive and then messing with it rhythmically, messing with it through instrumentation and everything else. For instance, when what's her name, Moira is going home drunk, he starts doing the Waltzing Matilda theme, but he starts messing with the meter and accenting odd beats of the melody, and it really yeah, it might have been a little academic, but it I thought it was really kind of a clever way to play with the music. Also, I think, so these composers, when they're writing the music, they have a super short schedule to do it with. They get the final proof of the film, then they have to write a score that fits the timing of the film, and perform it, and get it through all like the editing process right before release. Usually not a lot of time for that. So that he reused material a lot is not uncommon. And I know Dr. Zhivago, the score for that, they do that a whole lot, as well as that that other 60s movie, Romeo and Juliet. I had the A Time for Us, da 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 da. You hear it all the time in the 60s. So it didn't bother me that it was being used and reused over and over, because I thought it was being done cleverly. And I also think that the composer was trying to tell a story with how he used the music. So Waltzing Matilda, this well-known song, is kind of a big screw you to the government and to powers, and it's this, you're never going to take me alive. Yeah, I know that my fate's here, but I'm going to control my fate, even if I have to control it in a very horrific way, which mirrors a lot of the plot points of this film. So that it kind of kept coming back as a theme doesn't surprise me at all. I thought it was rather an artful use of the tune. I think it got especially pointed, I guess, when they had that a cappella version of it being sung, and they were hearing them through the walls during the storm near the end of the film. And they had that bass soloist that sang that final thing about "You'll never take me alive," and he commit suicide. I thought that was great musical foreshadowing, and really appreciated what
Elvis has left the building.
Also, a bit of trivia: he was married to Marnie Nixon for about 20 years. It looks like she was the ghost singer for such hits like the movie My Fair Lady. So, yeah, that's my comment. K0FER, back to net.
Oh, Chris, I completely agree with that. I really appreciate you coming in here and doing that good analysis there. Thank you very much. Okay, David, W5EBB. Your comments, David. This is N5EB.
Well, a quick comment. I have been on a nuclear submarine for work, a 688 class sub, and I can tell you it is true they cannot drink, but there is a smoking section in the submarine, which might seem a little weird, but no, there's ventilation and everything, and there's a smoking section, not official, it's just way in the back, past the engine room, kind of near the axle where the propeller meets the water pretty much. But there is a smoking section. Trivia. Thanks for running that, Bill. W5EBB.
Thanks, David. By the way, I actually looked that up earlier and found that 10 or 20 years ago they eliminated all smoking on submarines in the U.S. Navy. But it was, they allowed it for many, many decades. Okay. Do we have any other final comments before I close the net? It's 12:02 a.m. This is N5BB Afterglow Net. Any final comments? Final. Phoenix. End. No more. Tonight we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. Not too bad, really. I want to thank everybody that did participate. I really appreciate your comments. Really do. Okay, Tom, if you're still there, K5ICX, what's going on next week with Afterglow? This is N5BB, closing the net.
Hey, Bill. Yes, the movie next week will be a 2014 British science fiction film, what else, right? Called The Quiet Hour. Stars Dakota Blue Richards, Carl Davies, Jack McClellan, and Bridget Millar. I don't know who these people are. Humans are few and far between since Earth was invaded by unseen extraterrestrial machines that harvest the planet's natural resources and relentlessly kill its inhabitants. In a remote part of the countryside where starved humans have become as dangerous as the machines hovering in the sky, a feisty 19-year-old girl sets out on a desperate attempt to fight back a group of bandits and defend her parents' farm. Now, surprisingly, that sounds pretty terrible. It actually got a fairly decent reviews, so we'll just have to see what they have to say. You want to find out more, by the way, there's a free stream on YouTube or something. I've got it there. If you want to find the links and all that good stuff, send me an email, Kilo Echo 5 India Charlie X-Ray KE5ICX@yahoo.com, or go to the Facebook page, which is Afterglow Movie. That's 2 words, Afterglow and Movie, and say you want to sign up, and I'll get you on the list. It also has under one of the files the movies a couple of weeks in advance, 2 or 3 weeks in advance. So that's it, Bill. Thanks. You did a really great job tonight. You had some real thoughtful comments, and I think you brought out the best in just about everybody. Thanks for doing the net. This is KE5ICX.
Okay, Tom, well, thank you very much. The only thing I ask is please get the title right and the subject of the email. I apologize. It just, when I go through searching my email, it's kind of goofy to see the same movie in 2 different weeks. I know it's hard because you're probably doing this at, 12:30 in the morning or something, preparing it. Anyway, 73. Thank you very much. Never heard of that movie, but we will look it up. That's all we got. Good night to everybody. This is N5BB closing the Afterglow net. Good night.
Good night, Bill. I'm so tired, but I still have homework. K5GRH.
Hey, Melissa, did you think it appropriate that on the anniversary of 9/11, we talked about a apocalyptic movie?